Chapter 9:14. The Thought Moon Immortal's actions caused Qing Xiu to be like a fully drawn bow, unable to release the arrow. Needless to say, it was extremely uncomfortable. Seeing Lu Ye's return, Qing Xiu felt as if he had been pardoned. He hurriedly gave Lu Yi a pleading look. Seeing the situation, Lu Yi didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He didn't know how he had provoked the Thought Moon Immortal to be tortured like this. He took a few steps forward and cupped his fists. "My lord, I've returned from my patrol. There are no abnormalities within 100 miles. Please give me your instructions." The Thought Moon Immortal nodded softly and said, "Come find me later. I have something to tell you." Lu Yi replied. When he looked up again, the Thought Moon Immortal had already disappeared. Qing Xiu, who was beside him, almost collapsed. His legs and stomach shook as he said, "Brother Lu, please help me up." After a while, in the bamboo house, Qing Xiu's pale face regained some color. He looked at Lu Yi with emotion. To be able to be so safe and sound while working under that person was also a skill. He cursed in his heart but didn't dare to complain. The spiritual perception of a divine sea realm cultivator was not to be trifled with. How could he dare to say anything disrespectful? He only talked about business, which was to hand over the explosive fire spirit stones to Lu Yi. After he finished counting, Lu Yi said, "Brother Qing, go back and tell your master that the time of receiving the goods has been changed to once a month. Once every 7 days is a little too frequent. Not to mention that I have to trouble you to run around on both sides, I also have to go into closed-door cultivation sometimes." This suggestion was reasonable. Qing Xiu immediately agreed. "I'll go back and report to my lord. However, the final decision is not up to me. You just have to say it." Qing Xiu didn't stay for long and quickly left. After he left, Lu Yi came to the Thought Moon Immortal's bamboo house. Before he could speak, the Thought Moon Immortal's voice came from inside. Lu Yi went straight in. The Thought Moon Immortal was waiting. "What orders do you have, my lord?" Lu Yi asked. Ever since he came to this Ash Flame Mountain Pass, the Thought Moon Immortal didn't care about him other than giving him some missions in the first few days. Therefore, Lu Yi didn't know why she was looking for him. His strength is nothing in front of the Thought Moon Immortal. "Let's not talk about this for now. I need you to use that spirit rune again." In order to understand the flight of the rainbow phoenixes, she had to personally experience it once more. Only then could she decide whether or not to bring Lu Yi along. Of course. When Lu Yi nodded, he had already unsheathed his long saber. It slid across his palm, causing blood to flow. Then, he extended his hand towards the Thought Moon Immortal. Nian Yu Immortal understood tacitly. When her fingernails slid across her palm, blood similarly gushed out from the wound. Then, she gently placed her hand on Lu Ye's palm. Lu Ye's eyebrows shot up as he gently grasped it. It had to be said that this hand was very soft, almost as if it had no bones. Last time, when he was on the brink of death, everything he did was for the sake of emergency, so he didn't carefully experience it. When he held it, it was as if he was holding a piece of smooth and warm jade. In the next moment, the image of the Xiando in their palms turned into 2 streaks of blood-red light and flew to the back of their hands, forming the shape of a single wing. The shape was as red as blood, vivid and lifelike. The moment the flight of the rainbow phoenixes was successfully constructed, Lu Yi could clearly feel the vast and deep foundation within the Thought Moon Immortal's body. Correspondingly, the Thought Moon Immortal also felt the astonishing vitality within Lu Ye's body. "Can't you let go?" Thought Moon Immortal asked. Lu Yi shook his head. "Only through close physical contact can we share the foundation of our physical bodies." This explanation was reasonable. The Thought Moon Immortal asked again, "What's with the vitality in your body?" Such a vast vitality was no longer something a true lake realm cultivator could possess. Even those divine sea realm body cultivators might not have Lu Ye's foundation. "Some opportunities," Lu Yi casually replied, not bothering to explain in detail. The Thought Moon Immortal didn't pursue the matter. Instead, she asked, "What other means are there for me to borrow strength from?" Lu Yi thought for a moment and said, "A little spiritual connection. If the flight of the rainbow phoenixes targets the physical body, then a little spiritual connection targets the spirit. However, if we really use it, there will be no more secrets between us. Compared to Sir's spirit, the strength of my spirit is not worth mentioning. It's fine if I don't lend it. The Thought Moon Immortal nodded. She withdrew her jade-like hand from Lu Ye's and said calmly, "I'll give you a mission." "Please tell me, sir." The Thought Moon Immortal took out her guard token and activated it. Lu Ye's expression turned serious. This kind of mission issued through the guard token was extremely official. It was also recognized by Heaven's Secret. In other words, he could obtain battle merits. He immediately checked the guard token with both apprehension and anticipation. When he saw the contents of the mission, he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. The mission was very simple. Offer 3 drops of soul-cleansing water to the Mountain Pass Master. What kind of mission was this? If you want it, just say it. If you say it, I'll naturally give it to you. There's no need to go through so much trouble. Louis took out a bottle from his storage pouch and passed it to the Thought Moon Immortal. There were clearly more than 3 drops of soul-cleansing water in the bottle. There might even be 10 drops. That's too much. It's beyond my authority. The Thought Moon Immortal frowned. The 3 drops are required for the mission. The rest is a gift from your humble servant to you, sir. The Thought Moon Immortal's expression was somewhat strange. The word gift made her feel very old. However, this was Lu Ye's goodwill after all. She accepted it readily. The next moment, Lu Ye sensed a movement in his battlefield imprint. He lowered his head to check and found that his battle merits had increased by a lot. Including the gains from refining the explosive fire spirit rock, he now had almost 230,000 battle merits. In a few days, he would be distributing the 2 moon rods again. He would gain another 60,000 battle merits. Lu Yi didn't know what it was like for other true Lake Realm cultivators to obtain battle merits. However, ever since he came to the Vicissitude Flame Mountain Pass, it had always been very easy to obtain battle merits. Moreover, it was usually large amounts of battle merits that came into his account. "I'll give you 3 days of leave. After 3 days, follow me to a place." Lu Yi had only asked casually, but he never expected the Thought Moon Immortal to have no intentions of hiding anything from him. Liyuan. Where was Liyuan? Lu Yi had never heard of it before. He took out his 10-point map in a hurry and checked it. After confirming the location of Liyuan, he could not help but raise his head and look at the Thought Moon Immortal. The Liyuan that borders the Mist Province and the War Province? Yes. The Thought Moon Immortal nodded. Lu Yi was immediately alarmed. Why are you going there? If he wanted to go there, he would have to pass through the Myriad Devil Ridge's territory in the War Province and venture deep into the heart of the Myriad Devil Ridge. Just how dangerous was that? Of course, he could choose to take a detour, but if he did, it would definitely take up a lot of time. With the Thought Moon Immortal's temper and personality, it was unlikely for her to take a detour. It was very likely for her to directly pass through the entire War Province. Since I want to go, I obviously have my reasons for going. This isn't a mission. You can call it a request, so you don't have to go. The 3 days are a holiday, but it's also time for you to consider. You can give me an answer in 3 days. I'll take my leave. Lu Yi cupped his fists and retreated. He finally understood that the Thought Moon Immortal's investigation of the flight of the colorful phoenixes and her request for him to contribute the soul-cleansing water were all preparations for the trip in 3 days. He didn't know what secrets were hidden in the Li Plains, but if it could attract an expert like the Thought Moon Immortal, it was obviously a huge benefit. The Thought Moon Immortal gave him 3 days to consider, but to Lu Yi he didn't need to consider anything at all. Since his sect master wanted to borrow his strength, he naturally couldn't refuse. He didn't forget that when he was in danger in Lonely Mountain City, the Thought Moon Immortal saved him at the risk of being exposed. Although he also saved the Thought Moon Immortal's life later on, and they were considered to be even, interpersonal relationships weren't a transaction, nor was it a bargaining chip. Since his sect master was going, he had to accompany him. However, before that, he had to make more preparations. At the very least, he had to increase his life-saving assets. It seemed like he would have to spend some of the battle merits he obtained. After walking out of the Thought Moon Immortal's bamboo building, Lu Yi went straight to the Tianji Hall. He quickly connected to the Tianji Hall and entered the War Merit Hall. Following his memory, he arrived in front of a stone platform. There was a treasure robe placed on the stone platform, and it was a high-grade magic treasure robe. Magic cultivators had a higher demand for protective treasures like treasure robes and armor. This was because the physical bodies of magic cultivators couldn't be compared to cultivators of other sections. If they had a treasure robe or armor to protect them, they would have more means to protect their lives. Weapon cultivators generally didn't have a use for them, especially for weapon cultivators like Lu Yi who pursued their own battle techniques. Treasure robes and armor were even more burdensome. This was because for weapon cultivators, excessive protection would instead reduce the resistance to their own advancement. If they wore treasure robes for a long time, it was very easy for the weapon cultivator to misestimate their own strength, and it would also reduce the weapon cultivator's vigilance and grasp of battle opportunities. Therefore, since the beginning of his cultivation, Lu Yi had never bought any treasure robes or armor. Chapter 9:15. What's more, Lu Yi had the defensive spirit pattern as a means of protection, so he basically didn't need treasured clothes or armor. But this time he had to buy it. Going out with Nian Yuxian, who knew what kind of danger he would encounter and what kind of enemies he would encounter. With the protection of the treasured clothes, he could also have more life-saving means. It wasn't that there weren't better treasured clothes in the War Merit Pavilion. Not to mention the magic tool level, there were even spirit treasure level ones. But with Lu Ye's cultivation, the high-grade magic tool level was already the limit for him. No matter how advanced the treasured clothes were, it would be difficult for him to activate them. However, the price of this Scarlet Dragon battle suit was also not cheap. It was a full 90,000 battle merits. Compared to the soul-suppressing pagoda, which was more than 180,000 battle merits, its price was indeed only a fraction. However, the soul-suppressing pagoda was a soul tool that even a Divine Sea Realm cultivator might not have, so its rarity was naturally not comparable to the treasured clothes. But compared to other magic tools of the same quality, the price of 90,000 battle merits seemed outrageous. Of course, you get what you pay for. Treasured clothes and armors were expensive on one hand, but their quality was also unquestionable. It was the best magic tool level. Lu Yi only pondered for a moment, then decisively exchanged for the Scarlet Dragon battle suit. The loss of 90,000 battle merits really came and went quickly. It was quite heavy, but the material was as smooth as silk. He didn't know what material was used to make it. In the 9 regions, cultivators who could sew treasured armors and treasured clothes were extremely rare. If alchemists, array cultivators, and refiners were special talents that the major sects needed to cultivate with all their strength, then those who could sew treasured armors and treasured clothes were special talents among special talents. The Scarlet Dragon battle suit was named after a dragon, but it was obviously impossible to sew it with dragon scales. It was very likely to be made of dragon skin or something like that. After taking off his original clothes and putting on the Scarlet Dragon battle suit, he was immediately in high spirits. It was said that clothes made the man, and saddles made the horse. Because of Lu Ye's experience over the years and his own personality, when dealing with strangers, it was inevitable that he would give people a murderous feeling. However, after putting on this Scarlet Dragon battle suit, the original murderous aura disappeared a lot. Instead, it was more elegant and gentle, like a noble son from a big family or a big sect. Lu Yi activated his spiritual power and sensed it silently for a while. He more or less understood the various aspects of this treasure robe. This treasure robe had a very strong shrinking ability, which was a good thing for Lu Yi because after he used the beast transformation secret technique, his body would change to a certain extent. He had used the beast transformation secret technique twice, and both times his clothes had become ragged, but if he wore this Scarlet Dragon battle suit, he would not have such troubles in the future. Not only that, the armor seemed to be able to change its color. When Lu Yi got it, the color of the armor was aqua blue, but under the urging of spiritual energy, the color of the armor quickly changed. After trying out a few colors, Lu Yi was more inclined towards dark red and black. In the end, after some hesitation, she settled on black. In the end, the elegant and easygoing aqua blue color did not suit his temperament, and the black color was more profound. At this moment, the image of a noble young master from a large family or sect vanished. Lu Yi nodded in satisfaction. As for the flawless white color, that was completely out of the question. His sect destroying Yi was completely incompatible with the pure white color. Many sword cultivators liked to wear white, such as 4th senior brother Li Baxin. His clothes were white with a fluttering red cloud pattern on it. When he moved, it was like a gorgeous sunset, giving off a wild and unrestrained feeling. It was completely different from the pure white color. This was the appearance of the armor. As for what kind of specific functions it had, and how strong the defense it could provide, it still needed to be tested in actual combat. Lu Yi believed that his 90,000 battle merits would not go to waste. After all, this was a product of the War Merit Pavilion. After leaving the War Merit Pavilion, Lu Yi returned to his bamboo house. Yi and Hu Po, who had been left behind to guard the place, immediately saw Lu Yi in his new outfit. They gathered around him, clicking their tongues in wonder as they sized him up. Lu Yi held his head high and puffed out his chest, making his figure look heroic. "Looks good, doesn't it?" Yi couldn't help but nod. "Looks good, really good. It would look even better if it was white." "What kind of eyes are you looking at?" Lu Yi glared at her. He didn't want to show off anymore and sat down cross-legged. He took out the breath fruit core and prepared to enter the Mirage realm to test the defensive power of his artifact robe. Half a day later, Lu Yi opened his eyes and frowned. It wasn't that the result was unsatisfactory, but it was beyond his expectations. In the Mirage realm, the attacks of the 4th or 5th order True Lake Realm cultivators couldn't break through the artifact robe's defense. This artifact robe had greatly increased Lu Ye's strength, at least 30% of his survivability. For others, a artifact robe's defense would naturally be so good that they would be overjoyed. But Lu Yi didn't lose his head because of this. External forces were still external forces. They could be borrowed, but they couldn't be relied on. It was really easy for a weapon cultivator to lose his accurate judgment of his own strength. In the long run, it was very likely that he would be unprepared. If the artifact robe's defense was broken by a master one day, the consequences would be unimaginable. Thinking about it, but he wouldn't abandon the artifact robe for this reason. Since he had already spent 90,000 battle points, it was impossible to put it aside. Lu Yi could only secretly reflect on it at all times. However, compared to the protection provided by the artifact robe, the consumption of spirit energy in battle was obviously much higher. This was the price to pay for wearing the artifact robe. In a big battle, offense was the best defense. Instead of consuming spirit energy on defense, it was better to slash a few more times. The matter of the artifact robe was settled for the time being. After all, this trip was to follow Thought Moon Immortal on a mission. It was good to have such a protective measure. Thought Moon Immortal gave him 3 days. If he used 3 days to cultivate, there was no way for him to improve his strength. Lu Yi thought for a moment and suddenly came up with an idea. If that was the case, it seemed to be feasible. He hurriedly searched through his inventory bag, took out a sound transmission stone, and infused it with spirit energy. Soon, he frowned because the sound transmission stone didn't show any signs of resonance. In other words, the other sound transmission stone wasn't in the same world as the one in his hand. It was very likely that it had been put into the storage bag. After all, in 9 regions, the communication between cultivators relied on the battlefield imprint. The state guards could also rely on the guard token. Who would use such a low-level thing like the sound transmission stone? But if the sound transmission stone was ineffective, how could he find the other party? He couldn't just go to Lonely Mountain City in broad daylight again. Last time, he was able to get through without any danger, but this time, he might not be able to do so. After thinking about it, Lu Yi soon had an idea. He concentrated his mind and searched through the battlefield imprint. He found a brand that he hadn't contacted for a long time and sent out a message. After waiting for a moment, the other party replied with a simple word, "Okay." Lu Yi got up, walked out of the bamboo house, and soared into the sky. On the other side of the bamboo house, Thought Moon Immortal felt something. She opened her eyes and glanced in the direction where Lu Yi disappeared, and then no longer paid any attention. Blue Flame Mountain Pass and Lonely Mountain City Pass were thousands of miles apart. This 1,000 miles of land was regarded as a buffer zone for the confrontation between the two camps and did not belong to either side. In this area, there was a small mountain near Lonely Mountain City Pass. Lu Yi, who had rushed here, looked left and right. He didn't hide his figure and casually found a place to wait. About an hour later, he suddenly sensed that there was something unusual nearby. He quietly urged his divine sense to sense. He easily sensed that a familiar aura was quietly approaching. However, because she was not a ghost cultivator, the concealment method she could use was not very clever. In the eyes of the current Lu Yi, she clearly seemed a little sneaky. He didn't point it out and continued to wait patiently. A moment later, accompanied by a rustling sound, a figure appeared in front of Lu Ye's eyes. There was no doubt that it was a beauty. Her figure was slender and her face was beautiful. There was a meaningful smile on her face. She walked up to Lu Yi and stood 3 feet in front of him. She snorted, "Yi Lu? Or should I call you Lu Ye?" Lu Yi didn't mention the name Yi Lu in front of too many people. The number of people who knew his name was less than 5, and there was only one person who belonged to Wan Mo Ridge. Not long after Lu Yi arrived at the Cloud River battlefield, he teamed up with Shen Little Cat to guard a Grade C spiritual land. This was obviously not her real name, just as she knew from the beginning that Yi Lu was not Lu Ye's real name. The difference was that Shen Little Cat later knew about Lu Ye's background, but Lu Yi never knew about her. The familiar figure he saw at the crater of Blue Flame Mountain was Shen Little Cat. The two met in the Cloud River battlefield because of a spiritual land. They went through the secret realm of the realm of beasts together. After returning, the spring spirit of the spiritual land was plundered. Since then, they went their separate ways and never saw each other again. At that time, they were both in the Cloud River battlefield. Shen Little Cat's cultivation was several levels higher than Lu Ye's. Now that they were both in the true lake realm, Lu Ye's cultivation surpassed hers. "You see through but don't say it out loud. It's boring if you call me that. On your side, I'm Yi Lu." Lu Yi responded indifferently, without much enthusiasm of an old acquaintance. Shen Little Cat didn't care. Her impression of Lu Yi was like this: "You've got guts to contact me. Aren't you afraid that I'll bring a group of people to encircle you? You might not know how big the bounty on your head is in Wan Mo Ridge. It's old news. I've been very honest recently and didn't do anything to the people of Wan Mo Ridge. Is the bounty still there?" He really didn't do anything recently. He just led the fire spirit race to Lonely Mountain City with Ing Wuji, but Ing Wuji was also involved in this. There's no reason to withdraw the bounty easily. Your head is precious. Then did you bring people here? Shen Little Cat curled her lips. You know the answer. Chapter 9:16. Lu Yi now had divine sense to rely on. Although the range of his perception was not very large, if he investigated carefully, the wind and grass within a mile could not be hidden from him. Shen Kitten did come alone this time and did not inform anyone. "Speak, why are you looking for me?" Shen Kitten asked. "First of all, I want to thank you for last time." "Stop." Shen Kitten took a few steps back like a cat whose tail was stepped on. She looked at Lu Yi vigilantly. "What last time?" "There was no last time. Nothing happened last time. Their camps were hostile. Last time, a large number of cultivators gathered in Wan Mo Ridge to besiege the Huitian Valley spiritual land. She could not bear it and told Lu Yi, which was already against her position. Although Lu Yi did not leave in advance because of her tip-off, and instead killed the Wan Mo Ridge, Shen Kitten really did not want to mention the past. If this matter was known by others, she would be accused of colluding with the enemy. Lu Yi understood tacitly and kept his mouth shut. "You called me out just for this?" Shen Kitten looked at Lu Yi speechlessly. "Of course not." "Then what do you want to do?" "Let me say this first, I will not do anything that will harm Wan Mo Ridge. Don't think you can force me to do anything. Public is public, private is private. We have to distinguish this point. Don't worry, I won't ask you to do anything difficult. I just want you to bring something to someone." Shen Kitten was puzzled. "What do you want to bring? Who do you want to give it to?" Lu Yi took out a voice transmission stone and threw it to Shen Kitten. Shen Kitten took it and looked at it curiously. However, there was no voice transmission stone in 9 states, so she could not tell what the thing in her hand was for. There is a person called Ingwuji in your lonely mountain pass. Bring this to him. Ingwuji? Shen Kitten was a little surprised. You know him? Listening to Lu Ye's tone, not only did the two know each other, but they also seemed to have some secrets. Otherwise, why would he ask her to pass something to him? Shen Kitten's curiosity was burning. She looked at Lu Yi and asked, "What happened between you two? Ingwuji wouldn't be a spy for your Grand Heaven Alliance, right?" Lu Yi said lightly, "He is the core disciple of Sunluo Temple. Do you think such a person would be a spy of Grand Heaven Alliance?" "That's true. As for our relationship, if he's willing to tell you, you can ask him." Shen Kitten smiled. "Are you so sure that I'll help you?" "I wasn't sure at first, but now that you're here, I'm sure." Shen Little Cat snorted, but before she could continue speaking, something flew towards her. She quickly took it and realized that it was a jade bottle. She didn't know what was inside. She couldn't help but snort coldly. "In the end, I'm from 1mo Ridge and you're from Haotian Alliance. We shouldn't meet in private. I won't help you. I have my bottom line. Don't even think about bribing me." "Soul cleansing water," Lu Yi said softly. "What?" "The bottle contains 3 drops of soul cleansing water. Take it as your reward for helping me this time. You only need to give that item to Ingwuji. You don't need to do anything else." Shen Little Cat looked at Lu Yi in shock. She had an expression that said, "Don't lie to me." Soul cleansing water was a treasure that even Spirit Sea Realm cultivators coveted. It was extremely rare. A true Lake Realm cultivator like her had no way to obtain it. She was now a true Lake Realm cultivator. Above that would be Spirit Sea. However, she knew her own aptitude. It would be very difficult for her to reach Spirit Sea in this lifetime. But if she had 3 drops of soul-cleansing water in her hands, she suppressed the excitement in her heart and opened the bottle. Suddenly, a fragrance lingered at the tip of her nose. She felt refreshed. Shen Little Cat had never seen soul-cleansing water before. She didn't know if the bottle contained soul-cleansing water or not. But even if it wasn't soul-cleansing water, it must be a treasure that was beneficial to the soul. She grabbed it and stuffed it into her plump chest. Bottom lines are meant to be broken. I'll definitely help you with this. Her face was full of righteousness. Ba-yi Chinese network, she sighed in her heart. It wasn't that she wasn't firm, but Lu Yi had given her too much. Very good. Lu Yi nodded in satisfaction. But there's one more problem. Shen Little Cat looked troubled. Speak. You know that Ingwuji. He comes from Sunluo Hall and is a very arrogant person. He was fine before, but I don't know what troubles him recently, but he has been pulling a long face all day. I met him a few days ago and greeted him, but he ignored me. It's not a problem for me to give him the item, but what if he doesn't want it? If he dares to refuse, you can say something to him. What? Eternal jade blood. Shen Little Cat looked at him meaningfully. And say that Ingwuji isn't a spy of your Grand Sky Alliance. She even had a secret signal. Lu Yi was too lazy to explain anything. After a while, Shen Little Cat left. Lu Yi also returned along the way. At the Lonely Mountain Pass, Shen Little Cat returned with ease. Following the memory in her mind, she walked toward a group of buildings in the southeast corner. Ingwuji's residence was there. Although her hair was long, she had her own judgment. No matter what Lu Yi asked her to do this time, it would harm the interests of 1mo Ridge. No matter what the relationship between Lu Yi and Ingwuji was, she shouldn't pass on this message. Just as she said to Lu Yi, public was public, private was private. If she couldn't even distinguish this, then she shouldn't have cultivated for so many years. But the temptation of 3 drops of soul-cleansing water was too great. She could only agree. As for taking the things and not doing anything, it was impossible for her to keep the soul-cleansing water. No matter what, she had to be sure that Ingwuji wasn't a spy of Grand Sky Alliance. If the two of them only had a simple personal relationship, then it was nothing. As long as Ingwuji didn't do anything to harm the 1mo Ridge camp, then everything was fine. After making up her mind, before she reached the place, she saw Ingwuji's figure in front of her. Shen Little Cat was overjoyed. She hurriedly greeted him and bowed. Senior brother Ing. Ing Wuji looked like he had a lot on his mind. He subconsciously responded and was about to pass by. But unexpectedly, Shen Little Cat turned and blocked his way. What's the matter? Ing Wuji asked with a frown. If it was before, he wouldn't be so impatient with such a beautiful junior sister blocking his way. But recently, there were too many things on his mind. He wasn't in the mood to chat and joke with his beautiful junior sisters. Disregarding everything else, many people had died during the siege of Lonely Mountain City. Not a single one of the Cloud River tier cultivators that he had brought out to collect earth fire had survived. Others didn't know how the fire spirit tribe came to be, but he knew very well. Not only was he involved, but Lu Ye was also involved. But this matter couldn't be known to others. Otherwise, his future would be bleak. Moreover, after knowing that Lu Yi was in the Ash Flame Mountain Pass opposite, Ing Wuji knew that he couldn't stay in this place for long. Otherwise, he would be harmed by that calamity sooner or later. Disregarding everything else, many people had died during the siege of Lonely Mountain City. Not a single one of the Cloud River tier cultivators that he had brought out to collect earth fire had survived. Others didn't know how the fire spirit tribe came to be, but he knew very well. Not only was he involved, but Lu Ye was also involved. But this matter couldn't be known to others. Otherwise, his future would be bleak. Brother Shen. Shen Zhangqing walked on the road. When he met people he was familiar with, he would greet them or nod. But no matter who it was, everyone's face was expressionless. It was as if they were indifferent to everything. To this, Shen Zhangqing was already used to it, because this was the Demon Suppression Department, an organization that maintained the stability of the Great Qin Empire. Their main duty was to kill demons and monsters. Of course, they also had other side jobs. Could be said that, in the Demon Suppression Department, everyone's hands were stained with blood. When a person was used to life and death, then they would become indifferent to many things. When he first came to this world, Shen Zhangqing was a little uncomfortable. But as time passed, he got used to it. The Demon Suppression Department was very big. Those who could stay in the Demon Suppression Department were all powerful experts or people who had the potential to become experts. Shen Zhangqing belonged to the latter. Among them, the Demon Suppression Department was divided into two professions. One was the Guardian, the other was the Demon Exorcist. Anyone who entered the Demon Suppression Department would start from the lowest level, the Demon Exorcist. Then they would advance step by step, and finally have a chance to become a Guardian. Shen Zhangqing's previous life was a trainee Demon Exorcist in the Demon Suppression Department. He was also the lowest level Demon Exorcist. He had the memories of his previous life. He was also very familiar with the environment of the Demon Suppression Department. It didn't take long for Shen Zhangqing to stop in front of a pavilion. Different from the other places in the Demon Suppression Department that were filled with killing intent, this pavilion was like a crane in a flock of chickens. In the Demon Suppression Department that was filled with blood, it presented a different kind of tranquility. At this time, the pavilion's door was open. Occasionally, people would enter and leave. Shen Zhangqing only hesitated for a moment before stepping in. Entering the pavilion, the environment suddenly changed. A wave of ink mixed with a faint smell of blood hit his face. His brows instinctively furrowed, but they quickly smoothed out. The smell of blood on everyone in the Demon Suppression Department was almost impossible to wash clean. Chapter 917. After swearing the divine secret oath, Ing Wuji proved his innocence. He turned around and stared at Shen Kitten. It's your turn. Shen Kitten felt a headache coming on. She also swore the divine secret oath. After a while, the two of them looked at each other. They were both sure that they were not spies of the Haotian Alliance. They just had some contact with Lu Yi for some reason. Ing Wuji's face was cold. I don't care what kind of contact you have with that person. But since you call me senior brother, I have to advise you not to contact him in any way. If you get involved with that person, you won't have a good ending. He looked like an experienced person who had been poisoned. This made Shen Kitten even more curious. What happened between you and him? Don't ask. I don't want to say. That's all I have to say. You're on your own. Please. He was going to ask her to leave. Shen Kitten sighed. She could only say slowly, "Eternal jade blood. Elixir heart for 10,000 years. Ing Wuji said subconsciously. In the room, the two of them looked at each other. It was so quiet that one could hear a pin drop. Seen your brother Ing this thing? Shen Kitten broke the awkward silence. Give it to me. Ing Wuji reached out his hand as if he had accepted his fate. That guy Lu Ye was clearly warning him. The attack in defense of Lonely Mountain City last time was his sore point. He couldn't easily tell others about it. That guy's attitude was already very obvious. If he dared to refuse, he would definitely leak the matter to the Wanmo Ridge. Then, his life would not be easy. No matter what, the Wanmo Ridge suffered a lot in that battle. After receiving the voice transmission stone, Ing Wuji's hand trembled as if it was scalded. Only then did he look at Shen Kitten seriously. You'd better forget about what happened today. Also, remember my advice. Don't contact that person in any way in the future. Otherwise what? Shen Kitten looked at him curiously. Ing Wuji's interest waned. He waved his hand and had no desire to speak. What else could he do? He would end up like that. Shen Kitten left. He didn't know if she had listened to his warning. Holding the voice transmission stone in his hand, Ing Wuji's expression changed. He thought that as long as he hid in Lonely Mountain City, Lu Ye wouldn't be able to get involved with him. Who knew that he had such a method to ask someone to pass a voice transmission stone to him? After sitting for a long time, Ing Wuji gritted his teeth, poured his spirit energy into the sound transmission stone, and asked through gritted teeth, "What are you doing?" Outside Ash Flame Mountain Pass, Lu Yi, who was patrolling the area with Yi and Hupa, suddenly had a thought. She took out another sound transmission stone and secretly sighed at how efficient Shen Little Cat was. They had only been apart for half a day and the item was already in Ing Wuji's hands. He really didn't trust the wrong person. 2 days later, 300 li northeast of Lonely Mountain City. And don't be late. When Ing Wuji wanted to contact Lu Yi again, he found that the resonance of the voice transmission stone in his hand had disappeared. In other words, the other voice transmission stone had been put into Lu Ye's storage bag. Venting his anger, Ing Wuji roared at the voice transmission stone and stood up with an ashen face. Lu Ye, that bastard, was going too far. He inexplicably gave him a time and a place. Did he really think that Ing Wuji would be so easily bullied? I won't go this time. What can you do to me? Inside Lonely Mountain, after Lu Yi contacted Ing Wuji, he went to Thought Moon Immortal's bamboo house. As for Ing Wuji's reaction, it was easy to guess. He wasn't worried that Ing Wuji wouldn't go. He now had something on Ing Wuji. If Ing Wuji didn't go, he would immediately go to Lonely Mountain City in the same disguise as last time and take off his mask in front of all the cultivators of Myriad Demon Ridge. At that time, Ing Wuji would be in trouble. Sir, this humble servant has something to report. Lu Yi bowed at the foot of the bamboo house. What is it? Thought Moon Immortal's voice came from behind. Lu Yi turned his head and saw Thought Moon Immortal sitting on a tree trunk, looking down at him. The corners of his eyes twitched. He realized that this mountain pass master didn't live in the bamboo house most of the time. Perhaps she was used to living in the open for so many years and would often appear on the trunk of a large tree. Sir, this humble servant has found a guide to Li Plains. Perhaps he will be of some use. A guide? Thought Moon Immortal didn't understand. The journey to Li Plains is not short. Even if Sir has the means to conceal himself, we are going deep into the heart of Myriad Demon Ridge. There is a great risk of being exposed. But what if we have someone from Myriad Demon Ridge accompanying us? If we are interrogated, let him deal with it. Sir and I will be able to easily slip through. Thought Moon Immortal immediately understood what he meant. Originally, if she wanted to take Lu Yi to Li Plains, it would be impossible to fly there openly. This was because Li Plains was on the border between the War Province and the Cloud Province. As a famous Divine Sea cultivator, if she really flew there, her whereabouts would be easily exposed. Therefore, if she really wanted to go to Li Plains, she could only rely on the ability of a ghost cultivator to sneak there. But in this way, her speed would not be fast. But if she really did as Lu Yi said and found a cultivator from Myriad Demon Ridge to accompany them, things would be much easier if they were interrogated and let the other party deal with it. At the very least, she could fly there openly without worrying too much. But, you can find such a person? I already have a candidate and have an agreement with him. Thought Moon Immortal was surprised. She didn't know that Lu Yi had such an ability. Is he a trustworthy person? Thought Moon Immortal asked worriedly. But I have some information on him. I don't think he will dare to have any bad intentions. That's good. But you still have to be careful. When the time comes, I will handle everything. Sir, you only need to lead the way. You don't have to communicate with him. This way, it would be convenient for Thought Moon Immortal to hide. Thought Moon Immortal nodded. Even so, there's still a problem. Although I can wear a mask to hide my appearance, it's not easy to hide my cultivation. The person you are looking for might be able to detect my identity because of this. You don't have to worry about that. Sir, please move. Lu Yi gestured with his hand. Thought Moon Immortal understood and lightly floated down from the tree trunk. Lu Yi raised his hand and stepped forward. Excuse me. Under Thought Moon Immortal's surprised gaze, he pressed a hand on her lower abdomen. In the next instant, spiritual energy surged. Thought Moon Immortal clearly sensed that there was an additional spirit pattern on her body. After seeing Lu Yi use the Rainbow Phoenix's flight together, Thought Moon Immortal couldn't help but be curious about the use of this spirit pattern. What is this? Imitation of power. Lu Yi explained. Do you still remember when Yi and Hupa came from afar with the pressure of a Spirit Sea Realm cultivator and scared off Wan Zhonggang and the others? That is the effect of this spirit pattern. This spirit pattern can not only simulate the pressure of someone with a higher cultivation, but also the spiritual energy fluctuations of someone with a lower cultivation. Sir, you can try it out, but please be careful when you push your spiritual energy. After all, this is a spirit pattern I added to your body. If the spiritual energy fluctuations are too great, there is a possibility that the spirit pattern will fail. At that time, Sir's true cultivation will be exposed. Thought Moon Immortal understood and tried to stimulate the effect of the spirit pattern. The aura on her body began to change constantly. As a Spirit Sea Realm cultivator, she quickly figured out the mysteries of the spirit pattern. A moment later, the spiritual energy fluctuations on her body stopped at the level of a first-order true Lake Realm cultivator, even lower than Lu Ye's current level. This was already the limit. It would be impossible for her to go any lower. With a push of her spiritual energy, she dispersed the spirit pattern. Thought Moon Immortal smiled at Lu Yi. You are very thorough. I'll do as you say. This smile made the world lose its color. It was also the first time Lu Yi saw Thought Moon Immortal smile. His gaze lingered on her face for a moment before he looked away. As long as Sir is satisfied. If there are no other instructions, this humble one will take his leave. Looking at Lu Ye's departing back, Thought Moon Immortal's long-lost figure once again appeared in her mind. In the end, they were not the same. That person did things as he pleased, but Lu Yi had a feeling of planning before taking action. She raised her hand and touched the place on her lower abdomen where she had just been touched. Thought Moon Immortal had a complicated look on her face. Speaking of which, in all these years, no one had ever done such a rude thing to her. If it had been someone else, she would have slapped them. How could a woman's lower abdomen be touched so casually? Even if it was through her clothes, it was still not allowed. But the two of them had already done some intimate things before. During the battle against Wan Zhonggang, their fingers were still interlocked. Touching her lower abdomen didn't seem to be a big deal. In the future, there would definitely be times when she needed to borrow strength. In these 2 days, Lu Yi did not cultivate. Instead, he spent most of his time imprinting the origin of the dragon soaring realm. Occasionally, he would enter the Mirage realm to hone his blade skills. 2 days later, Lu Yi had just walked out of the bamboo building when Thought Moon Immortal appeared in front of him. They looked at each other and Thought Moon Immortal nodded slightly. She urged her spiritual energy to wrap around Lu Yi and soared into the sky. Sir, if we leave like this, there will be no one left to guard the mountain pass. Is it okay? Lu Yi asked. If 1mo Ridge wants Ashen Flame Mountain Pass, just take it. White Jade City and Clear Moon Cave can't wait for 1mo Ridge to take action. This way, they will have a reason to send troops. White Jade City Pass and Clear Moon Cave Pass were the left and right neighbors of Ashen Flame Mountain Pass. The former, like Ashen Flame Mountain Pass, belonged to Great Moon Pass, while the latter belonged to Small Moon Pass. Lu Yi had previously received a task to buy wine and had even made a trip to White Jade City Pass. However, he had come and gone in a hurry and did not have the chance to experience the local customs there. Over the years, the front line where the three major mountain passes were located did not have a fierce battle. The cultivators of White Jade City Pass and Clear Moon Cave Pass did not have the opportunity to gain military merits. Therefore, if Lonely Mountain City really dared to take action, the cultivators of these two major mountain passes would definitely be overjoyed. Chapter 9:18. Speaking of which, before Lu Yi came to Ashen Flame Mountain Pass, there would often be no one guarding it. Because Thought Moon Immortal couldn't stay here forever. She would go to Lonely Mountain City every few days, and at that time, Ashen Flame Mountain Pass was also empty. So, no matter what, the possibility of Ashen Flame Mountain Pass being captured was not high, unless Myriad Demon Ridge was preparing to launch a large-scale attack. Lu Yi hurried along. Half an hour later, Lu Yi focused his vision and looked ahead. Sir, we're almost there. I'll contact that person later, so doesn't need to say anything. Thought Moon Immortal nodded and flew down. Lu Yi left a pseudo-prestige spirit inscription on her body to conceal her spirit sea realm aura. Sir, do you have the face to agree? Lu Yi asked. Aura could be concealed with pseudo-prestige, but appearance could only be concealed with a face mask. Of course, it would be better if Thought Moon Immortal had a treasure that could disguise her appearance. I do. Thought Moon Immortal nodded. How could one not have a face mask when traveling outside? It was a must-have for sneaking around. In the Heavenly Secret Treasure House and Heavenly Secret Yen, the best-selling items were spirit pills and spirit artifacts. In addition, the sales of face masks were also high all year round. Then Sir will act according to the circumstances. Lu Yi instructed before turning around and heading to the agreed-upon location. After Lu Yi left, Thought Moon Immortal flipped her palm and a face mask that looked quite old appeared on her hand. Looking at this face mask, some distant memories inevitably appeared in her mind. She had once worn this face mask and done many things that no one knew about. As if recalling something interesting, the corners of Thought Moon Immortal's mouth curled up slightly. 300 kilometers northeast of Lonely Mountain City. Lu Yi, who was wearing a face mask, appeared here without any intention of deliberately hiding his whereabouts. However, in terms of cultivation, he revealed that he was only a first-order true Lake Realm cultivator. Obviously, he had also activated the pseudo-prestige spirit inscription. Although this spirit inscription couldn't provide any help in battle, it had one advantage, which was that it didn't consume much spirit chi to maintain it. Lu Yi only disguised his cultivation from third order to first order, so the cost of maintaining this spirit inscription was nothing to him. The main reason was that breaking through two minor realms in such a short period of time was a bit too shocking. In order to avoid scaring Ingwu Ji, it was best to restrain himself a bit. The terrain of this place was a forest, and it was not dense. Lu Yi flashed and stood on the crown of a large tree. His gaze swept around, but he did not find Ingwu Ji's figure. In such a situation, either Ingwu Ji didn't come, or he came and hid. Lu Yi felt that it was most likely the latter. He stealthily activated his divine sense and scanned his surroundings. However, he did not discover anything. He wasn't in a hurry, so he just stood there and waited. If Ingwu Ji really came, then he must have discovered him. Sure enough, after about the time it would take to make a cup of tea, when Lu Yi once again used his divine sense to investigate, he found that there was a new life force about 1,000 meters away from him. Ingwu Ji had suffered a big loss under Lu Ye's hands before. So, he knew that Lu Ye's perception was much stronger compared to ordinary cultivators. As such, he did not dare to get too close to Lu Yi. In his opinion, a distance of 1,000 feet was already very safe. There was no way that Lu Yi could discover him. He did not even dare to look at Lu Ye's location, lest his gaze arouse Lu Ye's vigilance, so he just lay there quietly. He had thought of completely ignoring Lu Yi because he knew that no matter what Lu Yi wanted to do, nothing good would come out of it. However, he was also afraid that Lu Yi would run to Lonely Mountain City and spread rumors. If that happened, he would not be able to clear his name. It was with such complicated feelings that he rushed here at the appointed time. He had already made up his mind that no matter what Lu Yi wanted him to do, he would decisively refuse and draw a clear line between them, never coming into contact with him again. After making up his mind, Ing Wuji immediately relaxed. However, he suddenly saw Lu Ye's figure move, flying towards him, and then he landed 10 meters away from him, his gaze fixed in his direction. Exposed? Impossible! Ing Wuji's heart was in turmoil. Although he did not want to admit it, the place Lu Yi was looking at was indeed where he was hiding. How could he have been exposed? He had not been exposed. This was just a coincidence. Just as he was thinking this, Lu Yi suddenly said, "Let's go." After 3 breaths, Ing Wuji undid his concealment and revealed himself, saying decisively, "Lu Yi, I'm not here to promise you anything, I'm just here to tell you something. You won't have to do anything difficult on this trip. This is for you. You might need it in the future." "What is it?" Ing Wuji took it and asked subconsciously, but he quickly reacted, "I'm talking to you, did you hear me? 3 drops of soul-cleansing water?" Ing Wuji instantly fell silent, almost suspecting that he had misheard. After meeting Lu Ye's serious gaze and confirming that he had not misheard, he hurriedly opened the jade bottle Lu Yi had just given him and carefully examined it. His face was filled with shock. It really was soul-cleansing water. Although he had never seen real soul-cleansing water, he had at least heard of this divine item from his elders. He had heard all kinds of rumors, and the item in his hand was perfectly matched. "Take it as your reward for this trip," Lu Yi added. Just as he said to Chen Wudong, "If you want a horse to run, you have to feed it." He could easily guess what kind of attitude Ing Wuji had towards him. If he wanted Ing Wuji to sincerely work for him, a simple threat would be meaningless. A stick and a date would be the best strategy. He could give Shin Kitten 3 drops of soul-cleansing water, so what was Ing Wuji worth? After a moment of silence, Ing Wuji had already made a decision. He put away the soul-cleansing water in the jade bottle and waved to Lu Yi. "Let's go." There was Shin Kitten before, and now there was Ing Wuji. Soul-cleansing water was indeed a treasure to buy people's hearts. Lu Yi, however, stood still. "Is there anything else?" Ing Wuji asked, puzzled. "Don't you need to take a leave?" Lu Yi asked. Ing Wuji's expression was embarrassed. "I've already taken a leave. But let me make it clear to you first. This time, I don't care what you do, but if you cross my bottom line, I will withdraw at any time. Also, I'm not helping you this time because of the soul-cleansing water. No matter what, you saved my life on the unparalleled continent more than once. Although I, Ing Wuji, am a ghost cultivator, I am a person who knows how to repay kindness." He spoke with a strong sense of righteousness. Lu Yi couldn't help but nod. Then he raised his hand and tapped on his battlefield imprint. With a flick of his finger, a dot of blue light floated in Ing Wuji's direction. Ing Wuji immediately covered his battlefield imprint vigilantly. "What do you want to do?" "Add an imprint so that you can continue to repay kindness in the future." Ing Wuji's expression turned bitter. Previously, the two of them didn't add each other's imprint, so when Lu Yi wanted to find him, he had to let Shin Kitten be the middleman to pass the message. But if he added an imprint, then Lu Yi could find him anytime and anywhere in the future. This kind of thing, Ing Wuji was about to refuse when he saw Lu Ye's fingers rubbing the hilt of his sword. "This guy wants to stab me again." Since he was inferior, Ing Wuji could only let go of the back of his hand and let the dot of blue light float into his battlefield imprint. Lu Yi tried to send a message to Ing Wuji. After confirming that the imprint was successfully added, he called out, "Let's go." Ing Wuji followed with heavy steps. A moment later, Ing Wuji, who was following beside Lu Yi, looked ahead and saw Thought Moon Immortal wearing a mask. He couldn't help but frown. Why is there someone else? Who is she? Following Lu Yi wasn't something to be proud of. If possible, he didn't want a third person to know. Who would have thought that there was someone else waiting here, and it was a female cultivator. This question stumped Lu Yi. He hadn't thought about how to address Thought Moon Immortal in front of Ing Wuji or how to introduce the relationship between the two. Just as he was about to warn Ing Wuji not to ask what he shouldn't ask, Thought Moon Immortal had already taken the initiative to greet him. She called out crisply, "Senior apprentice brother." Lu Ye's body swayed and he almost fell from the sky. Ing Wuji quickly caught him. He was puzzled. "What's wrong with you?" "There's been some hiccups in my cultivation recently," Lu Yi explained. "Senior apprentice brother?" He didn't expect Thought Moon Immortal to address him like that. And that tone, it wasn't the tone that Thought Moon Immortal should have. After so many days in Ash Flame Mountain Pass, his impression of Thought Moon Immortal had always been cold as ice and a woman of few words. She shouldn't be calling someone senior apprentice brother in such a crisp, sweet, and lively manner. When she got closer, her fragrance assailed his nostrils. Thought Moon Immortal's gaze swept past Ing Wuji. She said, "Senior apprentice brother, this is the powerful friend you mentioned. As expected, his temperament is extraordinary." "That's him." Lu Yi was extremely uncomfortable. If he hadn't been sure that Thought Moon Immortal would be waiting for him here, he would have doubted whether this person before him was really Thought Moon Immortal. Not only did her tone turn devilishly sweet, but Lu Yi could also see the curved eyes under Thought Moon Immortal's mask. She was even smiling as she spoke. Ing Wuji was flattered. He didn't expect Lu Yi to think of him like this behind his back. He immediately straightened his chest, cupped his fists and said, "Ing Wuji." Although he couldn't see the appearance of the woman before him, just from her voice and figure, she was definitely a rare beauty. The praise of a beauty always made people happy. Some of his dissatisfaction with Lu Yi also dissipated instantly. However, this woman looked very intimate with Lu Yi. Their relationship should be quite close. She might even be Lu Yi's woman, the so-called friend's wife. Also, he and Lu Yi didn't seem to have reached the level of friends. But no matter what, he didn't have any inappropriate thoughts about the woman before him. After all, she was from Grand Heaven Alliance. "Greetings, Senior Apprentice Brother Ing." Thought Moon Immortal bowed. "Senior Apprentice Brother Ing, just call me Water Immortal." "Junior Apprentice Sister Water Immortal, you really live up to your name." He turned to look at Lu Yi. "Brother, you're really lucky." Lu Yi forced a smile that was uglier than crying. Chapter 9:19. "Lu Yi, you have to disguise yourself a little. After all, your appearance is famous here. It's best if you pretend to be Fierce Bull." Ing Wuji reminded. Nian Yu Xian couldn't help but be suspicious. "Fierce Bull?" Lu Yi explained, "I have another identity." Nian Yu Immortal understood and smiled. Who didn't have another identity outside? Just like her name, Nian Yu Xian, Lu Yi also had a time when he would turn into Fierce Bull. Following the advice, he put away the Pan Mountain saber. However, with the Scarlet Dragon battle robe and Lu Yi's figure, he didn't look like a spell cultivator, but it was fine. Not all spell cultivators in the 9 provinces had large sleeves and wide robes. There were always some who wore clothes similar to the Scarlet Dragon battle robe. There wasn't much to prepare. Ing Wuji asked, "Where are we going?" He had already thought it through. Since he couldn't resist, he could only cooperate. Moreover, he had already obtained 3 drops of soul-cleansing water. "Li Plains." Lu Yi reported the destination. Ing Wuji frowned. "That's not near." He was secretly surprised. These two were too bold. They actually wanted to go deep into Li Plains. No wonder they needed to rope him in. Clearly, they wanted to use his identity as a Wanmo Ridge cultivator to clear the obstacles on their way. The Li Plains was vast and boundless, but because the environment wasn't very good, there weren't any sects from the Myriad Devil Ridge that had established themselves there. From the looks of it, Lu Yi wasn't going to cause trouble for anyone. This made things much easier. "Then let's go. But first, you two have to listen to my instructions. Don't do anything extreme. Otherwise, I'll risk my life to leak your information." "Don't worry, we should be the ones worrying." Ing Wuji thought about it and agreed. He took out his flying spirit artifact and landed on it. Lu Yi also took out his spirit artifact. However, before he could fly up, Nian Yuxian had already sat on it. Lu Yi was startled. Considering that Nian Yuxian wasn't in a good condition to use her spirit energy, he let her be. After a while, the two spirit artifacts turned into streams of light and soared into the sky, flying straight in the direction of Li Plains. After traveling for a few hundred miles, they were already considered to have entered the sphere of influence of Wanmo Ridge. Soon, they encountered a patrol team from Wanmo Ridge. "I'll talk to the patrol of Lonely Mountain City. Don't do anything rash," Ing Wuji said in a low voice and stepped forward. Lu Yi controlled the spirit boat to stop where it was, his fingers gently stroking the boat. Seated in front of him, Thought Moon Immortal's beautiful eyes were also staring at Ing Wuji's back. The moment she sensed that something was wrong, she would strike like lightning. Not far ahead, Ing Wuji exchanged a few words with the patrol team, and the patrol team left. "Let's go," Ing Wuji said. Lu Yi steered the spirit boat to follow. "Continue forward." Along the way, they occasionally encountered teams patrolling the nearby passes, but Ing Wuji was there to take care of them. Their journey was smooth. "This guide is rather reliable. Senior apprentice brother, do you have any information on him?" Thought Moon Immortal turned to look at Lu Yi. Because she was sitting and Lu Yi was standing, Thought Moon Immortal's body was tilted and her head was raised. Coupled with her crisp words, she looked rather cute and playful. Lu Yi, on the other hand, felt a prickling sensation on his back. He said in a low voice, "Milord, what's wrong with this woman? Why does it feel like she's a completely different person when she's wearing a mask?" "What are you talking about?" The guide this time is Senior Apprentice Brother Fierce Bull. "I am Junior Apprentice Sister Water Immortal." Under the mask, Thought Moon Immortal glared at Lu Yi. "Extremely charming. If you say so, then so be it." Lu Yi was helpless. Ing Wuji was so cooperative. Firstly, it was because of the 3 drops of soul-cleansing water. Secondly, as he said, Lu Yi had saved his life twice in the Wushuang continent. Ing Wuji came from a top sect after all. How could he be an ungrateful person? But strictly speaking, he judged that Lu Yi probably wouldn't do anything to harm the Myriad Devil Ridge. Otherwise, he wouldn't be so cooperative. After passing through a few checkpoints, the number of Myriad Devil Ridge patrol teams decreased. After all, they were already deep into the Myriad Devil Ridge's territory in the War Province. As night fell, the 3 of them found a place to rest. Ing Wuji started a fire and roasted the beast meat. Lu Yi set up an alert and defensive array nearby. When he returned, he found that Thought Moon Immortal had already started eating. Because it wasn't convenient to take off the mask, she only lifted it slightly when eating. But the speed of eating was not slow at all. Furthermore, he didn't know what Ing Wuji had said to her, but she was actually laughing non-stop. When Lu Yi saw this scene, he couldn't help but be on tenterhooks for Ing Wuji. He was afraid that he would say something he shouldn't and be killed by Thought Moon Immortal. "Senior Martial Brother, here you go." Thought Moon Immortal handed a piece of roasted beast meat to Lu Yi. Although he had heard her call him Senior Martial Brother many times along the way and told him to get used to her disguise, Lu Yi still stiffened when he took the meat. "Senior Martial Brother, so many interesting things have happened between the 2 of you. Why haven't I heard you mention it before?" Ing Wuji said angrily, "How is it interesting? It's obvious that he's been bullying me." "Then why didn't you resist?" Thought Moon Immortal tilted her head and looked at Ing Wuji innocently. Ing Wuji looked embarrassed. "I can't beat him." Thought Moon Immortal patted Ing Wuji's shoulder and said earnestly, "Then you have to cultivate well. Try to defeat my Senior Martial Brother as soon as possible and vent your grievances." Ing Wuji was very touched. He finally met someone who understood his difficulties. And it was a female cultivator. Damn it, why does Lu Ye get all the good things in the world? Why don't I have such an understanding junior martial sister? At night, the 2 of them took turns keeping watch. They would continue their journey at dawn. With 10,000 Demon Ridge's guidance and Ing Wuji, a core disciple of the Sanluo Hall in the War Province, the journey was peaceful. Occasionally, they would encounter 1 or 2 Wanmo Ridge cultivators flying around, but Ing Wuji would deal with them. This method was much more efficient and safer than Thought Moon Immortal's original plan of sneaking in with Lu Yi. Time flew by and 3 days later, a vast plain appeared in their field of vision. They had arrived at Li Plains. The entire Li Plains was extremely large. However, because it was barren and had no minerals or other cultivation resources, no sect had been established here since ancient times. From the 10,000 Demon Ridges map, the area occupied by Li Plains was almost 10% of the Wanmo Ridges territory in the War Province. The wind blew and the grass fell. The three of them jumped and looked ahead. The atmosphere was inexplicably heavy. Ing Wuji said, "I'm guessing that you won't allow me to leave now. Keep up." Lu Yi could not be bothered to talk nonsense with him. She steered the spirit boat forward. Ing Wuji sighed and could only accept his fate. Although he had arrived at Li Plains, he also knew that Lu Ye would not let him go so easily. He also did not know what Lu Ye and his junior sister wanted to do, but if he let him go at this time, there would be the risk of information being leaked. Moreover, they might encounter more Wanmo Ridge cultivators on the road ahead. At that time, there would be trouble for him to deal with. As they continued forward, Lu Yi soon discovered some abnormalities below. She frowned and said, "There was a great battle here." Along the way, there were many traces of a great battle. Moreover, those traces seemed to have been left behind for quite some time. The traces of a great battle covered an extremely large area. If there really was a great battle here, it definitely would not have been a small one. "I've never heard of the Great Battle of Li Plains 38 years ago." Ing Wuji glanced curiously at Lu Yi, as if wondering why he had never heard of it. Lu Yi shook his head. "That shouldn't be the case. You're a disciple of the Blue Blood sect, so how could you not know? What does that have to do with whether or not I'm a disciple of the Blue Blood sect?" Lu Yi frowned, faintly having some guesses. "Because the Plains of Li is the burial place of your famous eldest senior brother. Back then, millions of cultivators from the two great factions fought a bitter battle here." Ing Wuji spoke tirelessly. Lu Yi listened quietly, looking down at Thought Moon Immortal sitting in front of him. No wonder Thought Moon Immortal had been so quiet ever since they entered Li Plains. "You should know that the War Province originally fell completely under the control of your Grand Heaven Alliance, but after the Great Battle of Li Plains, half of the War Province fell into the hands of the 10,000 Devil Ridge. If it weren't for your Grand Heaven Alliance establishing a defensive line in time, the entire War Province would have fallen under the control of the Myriad Devil Ridge. Your Grand Heaven Alliance would have nothing to do with it." This was the first time Lu Yi had heard of this. No one had ever mentioned this to him before. The main reason was that the only people above him in the Blue Blood sect were the sect leader and senior martial sister Shui Yuan. Normally, aside from cultivating, Lu Yi spent most of his time not in the Blue Blood sect. When he occasionally returned, the sect leader was always elusive. Shui Yuan only cared about whether he was doing well and whether he had encountered any danger. Who would tell him these things that had already passed? According to Shui Yuan, there was a relationship between Thought Moon Immortal and his eldest senior martial brother. It seemed that Thought Moon Immortal had once served under his eldest senior martial brother. If that was the case, Thought Moon Immortal must have been present during the Great Battle of Li Plains. Now that she was revisiting this place, she clearly remembered some things. Lu Yi had never asked why she had come to Li Plains this time, but now it seemed that it was very likely related to what had happened in the past. Could it be that his eldest senior martial brother had left some treasure behind in Li Plains? That shouldn't be the case. If that was the case, Thought Moon Immortal would have taken it away long ago. Why would she wait until today? She wanted to use his strength to achieve her goal, which meant that she couldn't do it herself. There had to be some risk involved. Fortunately, he had already entered Li Plains, so he would soon know what Thought Moon Immortal wanted to do. Although she had remained silent, she was secretly urging her spiritual chi to change the direction of the spirit boat at a critical moment. She was clearly looking for something. For hours later, a black line visible to the naked eye suddenly appeared in front of him. As he got closer, Lu Yi discovered that it wasn't a black line at all, but a bottomless chasm that stretched across Li Plains. It was like a natural chasm that divided Li Plains into two. Chapter 920. The One-Line Sky. Looking at the bottomless ravine, Ing Wuji raised his eyebrows. Is this your destination? Is there a problem? Lu Yi asked. Although he wasn't sure if this place was their destination, it seemed very likely that it was. No problem. Ing Wuji shook his head. The one-line sky of Liyuan was very famous in the myriad Devil Ridge. No one knew how this huge and continuous ravine had appeared, but it contained many opportunities. Some people had found treasures left behind by powerful seniors in this ravine, and some people had found extremely precious minerals and collected precious spirit flowers and herbs. However, no matter how many opportunities there were, after so many years, they had all been found. The one-line sky of today was just a bit special, and no one had come here to waste time. The spirit boat flew along the edge of the one-line sky, and when it reached a certain place, the silent thought moon immortal suddenly said, "Go down." Lu Yi hurriedly changed direction and steered the spirit boat into the depths of the one-line sky, with Ing Wuji following closely behind. At this time, he was also very curious about Lu Ye's purpose. Even if he was driven away now, he didn't want to leave. He couldn't figure out why Lu Yi had come here with such a clear purpose. They continued to go down, and after an unknown period of time, when they looked up again, there was only a ray of light above their heads. It was truly the one-line sky. At this point, Lu Yi could already vaguely sense the existence of a magnetic field, because his spirit energy was faintly being suppressed. The magnetic field wasn't something that only existed in magnetic but also deep underground, and it was very common. To Yi, the magnetic field was extremely frightening, so even if she had the ability to burrow through the ground, she wouldn't easily burrow too deep underground. If she was disturbed by the magnetic field, her spirit body would inevitably be damaged, and if the situation was serious, it was very likely that she wouldn't be able to maintain her spirit body and would disappear. Therefore, when burrowing through the ground, Yi was always a bit careful. The light around them was dim, but it didn't affect their vision. It wasn't until a certain moment that Thought Moon Immortal suddenly jumped up from the spirit boat and landed in a concave stone pit. Lu Yi and Ing Wuji followed closely behind. Ing Wuji frowned because he suddenly realized that Lu Yi didn't seem to be in charge of this trip, but the female cultivator called Shui Xian. Standing in the sunken stone pit, Thought Moon Immortal raised her hand to touch the stone beside her. Looking at the back of the woman in front of him, Ing Wuji suddenly felt that she looked familiar, as if he had seen her somewhere before. He couldn't help but recall the scene he saw from afar on the day of the siege of Lonely Mountain City. That was the battlefield of the Spirit Sea Realm warriors. The figure that escaped from the Lonely Mountain City that day was so similar to the one in front of him. A terrifying thought popped up in his mind. He involuntarily gulped and stiffly turned his head, just in time to see Lu Yi looking at him meaningfully, her eyes full of mischief and ridicule. Ing Wuji instantly understood. He wasn't wrong. The woman in front of him wasn't Junior's sister water deity. She really was that person. She was the woman that even a Spirit Sea Realm cultivator like the Mountain Pass Master was afraid of. Thinking back on everything that had happened along the way, Ing Wuji was on the verge of tears. He thought that nothing good would come out of getting involved with Lu Yi. Who would have thought that he would be involved in even bigger trouble? His legs and stomach were shaking, and his entire body was weak. Ing Wuji wished he could pass out right now, but what made him angry was that the feeling of terror lingered around him, making him more awake than ever. Thought Moon Immortal removed her disguise and even took off her mask. She pretended before because she was afraid that her identity would be exposed, and also because she didn't want to put too much pressure on Ing Wuji. Now that they were here, there was no need to keep up the disguise. No matter what, she would be exposed later. Lu Yi silently took off her mask as well. She took out the mountain pan saber from her storage space and held it in her hand. Don't do anything rash. Ing Wuji was shocked. For some reason, he had a feeling that Lu Yi was going to kill him. Lu Yi ignored him and only asked Thought Moon Immortal, "My lord, what should we do?" Thought Moon Immortal didn't even turn her head. She said indifferently, "Don't leave me by more than 10 feet. The conversation between the two was unclear, but Ing Wuji understood. He hurriedly nodded his head like a chicken pecking rice. I definitely won't leave. Senior, don't worry. This junior still cherishes his own life. He turned his head and looked at Lu Yi with resentment. His expression seemed to say, "You've screwed me over." As expected, those 3 drops of soul-cleansing water were not so easy to obtain. If he had known that there would be such a divine ocean realm cultivator on this trip, forget 3 drops, even 30 drops, he would have considered it. But no matter what, at this moment, Ing Wuji felt like he was sitting on pins and needles. In front of him, Thought Moon Immortal had already activated her spiritual power. She raised her hand, and the array flags hidden in the surroundings were drawn into her hand. Shockingly, she had already set up many formations here. The arrays set up by a divine ocean realm cultivator were naturally exquisite. This was also the reason why this place had remained a secret for so many years. Although there were not many people who came to One Line Sky to search for treasures and opportunities, there were still people who came. If there was no array concealment, the opportunities here would not have been preserved until now. When Thought Moon Immortal unlocked the array, the stone wall in front of her suddenly trembled. Then, a large stone wall slid to the side, revealing an inner passage. Thought Moon Immortal turned her head and stretched out her hand to Lu Yi. Lu Yi understood. When she unsheathed her Panshan saber, the saber light flashed, and blood spurted out from her palms at the same time. Ing Wuji was dumbfounded. He didn't know what Lu Yi was trying to do. But something that made him even more dumbfounded soon happened. Because he saw that Lu Yi actually grabbed Thought Moon Immortal's jade hand. Not only did she grab it, but their fingers were also intertwined. At this moment, Ing Wuji's eyes almost popped out. Deep in his heart, he admired Lu Yi to the extreme. The woman in front of him was an existence that even Wan Zhonggang had a headache and was afraid of. Her appearance was even more beautiful. It could be said that such a woman was rare in the entire 9 regions. The number of people who could match her could be counted on one's fingers. "Milord, please do as you wish. I will take care of myself." "How about letting him explore the way ahead?" Lu Yi suggested again. "Luya." Ing Wuji recovered from his stupor and flew into a rage. "Are you still human?" Only God knew what kind of danger was ahead. How could it be an ordinary danger that could make a powerhouse like Thought Moon Immortal feel as if she was facing a great enemy? Luya, this guy was simply bad. He actually wanted to explore the way himself. Fortunately, Thought Moon Immortal quickly said, "He can't. With his cultivation base, he can't hold on for more than 3 breaths." Ing Wuji immediately breathed a sigh of relief. Being weak also had its advantages. "Let's go." Thought Moon Immortal took a deep breath, and her plump chest rose high. Then, her figure swayed and stepped into the dark passage. Lu Yi completely relaxed his body and mind, letting her do whatever she wanted. Naturally, he was also taken in. At the same time, he didn't forget to tell Ing Wuji, "Keep up." Ing Wuji cursed Lu Yi in his heart, but he could only obediently do as he was told. At this time, he didn't dare to act rashly. Thought Moon Immortal was right in front of him. Even if he wanted to escape, he had to have the ability to do so. However, Lu Yi was holding the hand of a woman who even ordinary Divine Sea Realm cultivators would feel ashamed of their inferiority. How audacious! What puzzled Ing Wuji even more was that Thought Moon Immortal seemed to be the one who took the initiative. Were all the seniors nowadays so bold? These two, what was their relationship? Before he could figure it out, Thought Moon Immortal lifted their hands, turned around, and pressed herself against Lu Ye's chest. Even more intimate, Ing Wuji was already numb. Apart from his shock, he was also envious of Lu Ye's luck with women. At this moment, Lu Yi and Thought Moon Immortal's posture was the same as when they fought against Wan Zhonggang. At first glance, it looked as if Lu Yi was hugging Thought Moon Immortal. Lu Ye's right hand was clasping Thought Moon Immortal's left hand, and pressed against her lower abdomen. However, he knew that Thought Moon Immortal was protecting him. There must be some danger ahead, so Thought Moon Immortal was blocking his path. "Don't think too much." Thought Moon Immortal's voice was soft and trembling. In such a posture, she could clearly feel Lu Ye's scorching breath. Her neck was itchy and her ears were hot. I know. Lu Yi took a deep breath and calmed his mind. Suddenly, there was the sound of something breaking through the air. In the pitch-black tunnel, there was an instant flash of light. Lu Ye's expression froze. He had no idea where this attack came from. By the time he noticed it, it was already right in front of him. In other words, this attack alone had almost exceeded the limit of what he could deal with. Thought Moon Immortal had unknowingly drawn a sword. Lu Yi, who was almost touching her body, could clearly feel a powerful force surging out of Thought Moon Immortal's body. He raised his sword and slashed down. The attacking light shattered. Thought Moon Immortal's footsteps did not stop, and she continued to move forward. Lu Yi followed like a shadow. Behind him was the lonely Ingwuji, who was on tenterhooks. The Great Sage of Human Tao, manga of the same name, is already online. Everyone can download Tencent Animation to support it. Chapter 921. The sound of blades slashing rang out incessantly as sharp rays of light slashed at her from the front. The long sword in Thought Moon Immortal's hand danced gracefully, blocking all the attacks that came at her. She activated her spiritual power to protect Lu Yi behind her. Like an indestructible mountain, she blocked all the incoming storms. A strange sense of security that she had never felt before rose in her heart. For the first time, Lu Yi couldn't help but seriously look at the woman in front of her. Unfortunately, because her back was facing her, she couldn't see much. She could only see her snow-white slender neck and her elegant hair. Her hair danced, tickling Lu Yi's neck and cheeks like little hands. It was visible to the naked eye that her neck, which was as white as jade, began to redden. Even though her back was facing Lu Yi, the perception of a divine sea realm cultivator was extremely powerful. She could clearly sense Lu Yi's gaze at this moment, which made the Thought Moon Immortal feel rather uncomfortable. The power of her attack became even more fierce. As if she was warning him, Lu Yi looked away. A soft exhalation came from the front. Thought Moon Immortal's tense body relaxed a little. She said, "I don't know what kind of treasure is hidden in front, but it's very likely to be a flying sword." These sword chi were all slashed out by that flying sword. Probably to divert Lu Yi's attention, or to make the situation less awkward, she took the initiative to reveal some information about this place. "I've been here several times, but I couldn't do my best each time. The furthest I went was 300 feet. So I need your help." Lu Yi's attention was indeed diverted. If the sword chi alone can force you to retreat, then what's the flying sword's main body like? Who knows? Thought Moon Immortal was obviously not sure of her judgment. If it was a wide area, she might be able to do it with her ability. However, the passage here was narrow, and there was no room to maneuver or dodge. Facing the slashes of the sword chi, she could only resist them head-on. In this way, she couldn't use any tricks. So she had to bring Lu Yi along. With the rainbow phoenixes, she could borrow the huge vitality in Lu Yi's body anytime and anywhere. There might be a possibility of success. Of course, it was only a possibility because no one knew how long this passage was. "Sir, have you never tried to sneak in?" Lu Yi asked. "I've tried, but it doesn't work. There should be a lot of restrictions here, and as long as someone steps into this place, it will immediately activate the wonders of the restrictions, and endless sword chi will attack continuously." After a slight pause, she said in a low voice, "Don't talk for now." Originally, he wanted to distract Lu Yi by talking, but who knew that it would make the situation worse, because when Lu Yi spoke, there was a hot stream of air rushing into the river. It made her feel very uncomfortable on her neck. Lu Yi understood tacitly. He kept his eyes forward and remained silent. He completely relaxed his body and mind, allowing the Thought Moon Immortal to lead him through the passageway. 500 feet, 100 feet, 200 feet, 300 feet. After shattering countless sword chis, the three of them finally stepped into the deepest part of the missing Moon Immortal's territory. At this point, the frequency and strength of the sword chi attacks had reached an extremely shocking level. Lu Yi knew that he wasn't weak, but if he were to face such a situation alone, he probably wouldn't be able to withstand even a single sword chi. This made him very curious. Just what kind of flying sword, without an owner, could make an expert like the Thought Moon Immortal return empty-handed several times with just the sword chi it activated. Above spirit artifacts were artifacts, and above artifacts were spirit treasures. The flying swords inside were clearly not at the level of spirit treasures, but beyond. What was above spirit treasures? Lu Yi really did not know, because with his current cultivation base, artifacts were the most suitable for him. He could not activate things like spirit treasures at all. The nine-front formation was a spirit treasure, but until now, Lu Yi and Yi were still unable to activate the full power of the nine-front formation. Compared to the last time they came, the Thought Moon Immortal's strength had clearly improved, because the last time she came here, she was already at her limit, but this time it did not seem too difficult. Further ahead was the true test. As expected, the frequency and strength of the sword chis had increased, and Lu Yi could clearly feel the vibrations from each of the Thought Moon Immortal's attacks. He could tell that she was starting to get serious. As they continued forward, the Thought Moon Immortal began to struggle. Lu Yi saw this, but there was nothing he could do. At this moment, he could only help the Thought Moon Immortal in terms of survival. If he interfered, it would only make the situation worse. With a hiss, the Thought Moon Immortal grunted. When the sword chi dispersed, it left a gash on her sword-wielding right hand. Blood seeped out, instantly dyeing her clothes red. However, the Thought Moon Immortal did not stop. Instead, she sped up. Hiss, 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 sword chi constantly seeped out, slicing at the Thought Moon Immortal's body, gradually worsening her injuries. However, Lu Yi, who was protected by her, was unharmed. As for Ying Wuji, who was further behind, he was also unharmed as he trembled. The smell of blood gradually thickened. Lu Yi could feel the vitality in his body being continuously injected into the Thought Moon Immortal's body through the Rainbow Phoenix's dual flight, giving her the ability to continue fighting. Time passed extremely slowly. After the time it took to brew a cup of tea, the woman in Lu Ye's arms had become a bloody person. If the Thought Moon Immortal had come alone, she would have to retreat with such injuries. Because if she continued forward, she did not know if she would have the chance to retreat. The Great Sage of Human Tao, latest chapters. Domain name, however, because of the injection of Lu Ye's vitality, although her injuries were not light, she did not feel weak at all. Moreover, she discovered that not only could she borrow Lu Ye's vitality, she could also borrow Lu Ye's spiritual power. As a result, Lu Yi had no choice but to take out a demon core from his storage pouch and stuff it into his mouth. Under such circumstances, consuming a demon core was the fastest way to replenish spiritual power. Lu Yi, can you still hold on? Lu Yi, who was eating the demon core, suddenly heard the Thought Moon Immortal's voice. He could not help but be stunned. This was the first time the Thought Moon Immortal had called him by his name since they met. No problem. Then I'll speed up. There was no end to the passage ahead, as if there was no hope in sight. The Thought Moon Immortal was getting impatient. As she finished speaking, the figures stuck close to each other quickly rushed forward. As the Thought Moon Immortal danced in her hands, clinking sounds could be heard. Ying Wuji, who was following behind, cried out. He hurriedly moved and chased after her. The missing Moon Immortal would protect Lu Yi, but she would not care about his life or death. He could only pray that the missing Moon Immortal was strong enough to hold on. Otherwise, once the missing Moon Immortal died, it would be his and Lu Ye's turn to die. Sword chi surged like tidewater, and the entire passageway became a sea of sword light. It was under such circumstances that the Thought Moon Immortal brazenly charged in. The sword light was destroyed in patches, and the injuries on her body gradually worsened. However, because of the continuous injection of Lu Ye's vitality, she still had the ability to continue fighting. This was a very strange situation. Finally, at a certain point, all the sword light was completely destroyed, and the passage became pitch black. Only the Thought Moon Immortal's heavy breathing could be heard. Are you done? Ying Wuji asked timidly from behind. Just as he finished speaking, another dazzling light lit up ahead. The sudden flash of light in the pitch-black darkness was so bright that it was almost impossible to open one's eyes. An incomparably sharp killing intent attacked from the front. When Lu Ye's eyes narrowed, the Thought Moon Immortal had already brought him forward. It was a sword chi that seemed to be able to cut through the void. When the Thought Moon Immortal's longsword met it, the Spirit Treasure longsword actually let out a painful groan. The sword chi was blocked, but it did not disappear. Instead, it continued to slowly slash forward, as if it wanted to cut through the waist of all the intruders. When the crisp sound rang out, Lu Ye's eyelids twitched. He hurriedly looked at the Thought Moon Immortal's longsword. He saw that a small crack had appeared on the longsword. He could not hold on. Once the longsword broke, the three of them would most likely be in grave danger when faced with such a sword-light slash. With a thought, Lu Ye made a decision. He raised the saber in his hand. The arm holding the saber bulged slightly for an instant and stabbed out with the starry sky. Specks of starlight landed on the sword chi. However, how could a true lake-stage cultivator like Lu Ye shake the sword chi that even the Thought Moon Immortal found so difficult to deal with? Kacha! The crack on the longsword became much larger. At the critical moment of life and death, Lu Ye raised his other hand and grabbed the Thought Moon Immortal's sword-wielding hand. Spiritual power surged. On the longsword, a complex and complicated spirit pattern instantly formed. Moon Reversal. The Thought Moon Immortal seemed to be able to sense the profoundness of this spirit pattern. She immediately became spirited. The long sword in her hand danced like a fluttering butterfly. In an instant, she stabbed out more than 10 times. The fine sword light pierced the same spot on the sword chi. In the next instant, the seemingly solid sword chi suddenly broke apart from the middle. It split into two and shot towards the two sides of the cave wall. Without a sound, huge and deep slash marks instantly appeared on the two sides of the cave wall. After stabbing out more than 10 times, the Thought Moon Immortal seemed to have lost all her strength. She went limp in Lu Ye's arms. Lu Ye also had the illusion that his entire body had been sucked dry. Although he was unharmed, the Thought Moon Immortal was currently borrowing the power in his body. It could be said that the consumption was huge. His legs went limp. He hugged the Thought Moon Immortal and fell to the ground together. Heavy panting sounds came from their mouths. They were like fish out of water, rising and falling one after another. Ing Wuji, who was behind them, was dumbfounded. "What's wrong with you guys? Get up quickly." If they didn't get up now, he wouldn't be able to block another attack like the one just now. For a moment, he had the idea of slipping away. Lu Ye and the Thought Moon Immortal clearly realized this as well. They both struggled to get up. Lu Ye leaned against the cave wall while the Thought Moon Immortal nestled in his arms. They stared ahead vigilantly. From the beginning to the end, their interlocked fingers had never loosened. But fortunately, there were no more attacks coming from the front. The Great Sage of Human Tao, latest chapter on the internet. Domain name that unbelievably powerful sword chi just now should be the last attack. Chapter 922. It was quiet in the dark passage. The constant sense of danger since they stepped into the passage had disappeared. Lu Ye leaned against the wall of the cave, and Thought Moon Immortal nestled in his arms. Both of them hurriedly used their own methods to recover their strength. The sound of mockery and eating was very abrupt in this silent atmosphere. Thought Moon Immortal didn't pay much attention at first, but soon realized that something was wrong because this sound didn't sound like the sound of a spirit pill being chewed. She scanned with her divine sense and was shocked, because she found that Lu Ye was actually eating a spirit pill. "Are you okay? How could a person eat a spirit pill?" She could be considered an experienced and knowledgeable person, but she had never heard of such a thing. A spirit pill did contain a huge amount of energy, but that was the essence of a demonic beast's cultivation. For a cultivator, it was impure and impure. Not to mention whether or not it could be refined and absorbed. Even if it could, it would make one's own spiritual energy extremely obscure. "I'm fine," Lu Ye casually replied and continued to eat the spirit pill. Large patches of gray fog rose from the talent tree, and the almost dried-up spiritual energy in his body quickly began to recover. Thought Moon Immortal didn't ask any more questions. Although Lu Ye's actions made her feel strange, now was obviously not the time to investigate. It wouldn't be too late to ask about the situation when she had time in the future. She continued to recover and adjust her breathing. Borrowing the huge vitality in Lu Ye's body, coupled with the foundation of Thought Moon Immortal's divine sea realm, her injuries were also rapidly recovering. Only her blood-stained clothes couldn't be changed for the time being. But these were all small details and didn't hinder anything. While the two of them were recuperating, Ing Wuji hid off to the side, not saying a word. This experience had been completely forced upon him, so no matter what happened next, it had nothing to do with him. What he needed to do was to preserve his little life. Once this matter was over, he would quickly part ways with Lu Yi. Time passed bit by bit. For hours later, Thought Moon Immortal said, "Let's go." She had almost recovered, and her injuries were much better. It didn't affect her strength anymore. When she got up, she turned around and walked out of Lu Ye's arms, but their hands never separated. No one knew if there would be any danger next. The rainbow phoenixes had been working, and it was also convenient for her to borrow strength from Lu Yi at any time. After walking for a while, a spot of light suddenly appeared in front of them. The light appeared abruptly. Before it reached a certain area, none of them noticed it at all. The moment they crossed a certain spot, the light suddenly appeared. Following the direction of the source of the light, the three of them walked for another 1,000 feet and arrived at the end of the tunnel. At the end was an abyss that made one's heart palpitate. Looking down, one couldn't tell how deep it was. The deep darkness seemed to be able to swallow everything. There was a stone bridge in front of them. The stone bridge was not wide and could only allow 3 people to walk side by side. At the end of the stone bridge, there was a towering stone pillar. The stone pillar stood straight in the abyss, and it was unknown how deep it was rooted. At this point, all 3 of them revealed shocked expressions. It was because numerous sword lights were drifting about in the chasm around the stone platform like a school of fish swimming endlessly. Shockingly, the bodies of those sword lights were flying swords of extraordinary quality. There were so many of them that it was difficult to calculate. Such a large number of flying swords, and the quality was extremely good. If he could bring them out, it would definitely be a windfall. Ing Wuji's heart raced as he looked, but in the end he sighed inwardly. With a spirit sea realm cultivator like Nian Yuxian here, no matter what good things there were, he would not have a share. He looked away. Out of sight, out of mind. Lu Yi and Nian Yuxian's gazes did not stop at the numerous flying swords, but fixed on the stone platform. In the center of the stone platform, there was a short sword that was only about 2 feet long. Although it was unknown how long it had been there, its surface was still as smooth as a mirror, and it shone brightly. When they looked at it, they immediately felt a cold and sharp sword intent, as if it wanted to cut through something as illusory as the gaze. The light that the 3 of them saw in the tunnel was released by this short sword. Nian Yuxian's guess was right. There were indeed flying swords of extraordinary quality here, but it was not just one, but many. However, relatively speaking, the short sword on the stone platform was of the most outstanding quality. Lu Yi did not know what quality the short sword was, but from the information she had now, this short sword was definitely not at the level of a spirit treasure. If Nian Yuxian got her hands on such an item, then her deterrence would be terrifying. Such a short sword could be used as a flying sword, but it could also be used as a weapon for ghost cultivators. If she could get her hands on this sword, Nian Yuxian's strength would definitely increase greatly. When that time came, her life would be in danger. There's a formation. Nian Yuxian's gaze did not stop at the 2-foot short sword. She looked around and immediately made a judgment. Although Lu Ye's cultivation in the Tao of formations was far superior to cultivators of the same level, there was still a large gap between him and Nian Yuxian. Only with his reminder did she see some clues. Realization dawned on her. The moment the 3 of them stepped into the tunnel, they must have activated the power of the formation here, which was why there was an endless stream of sword chi. That was not only a hindrance, but also a test. Who had left behind this short sword and so many flying swords? Who had set up this formation? What was the purpose of this test? Just as Lu Yi was deep in thought, Nian Yuxian had already taken his hand and walked forward. "I'll wait for you here." Ing Wuji hurriedly shouted. Although the treasure was good, since he did not have a share of it, there was no need for him to take the risk. Waiting here obediently was the best choice for him. Nian Yuxian turned a deaf ear to him. It was not that she trusted Ing Wuji, but that Ing Wuji could not do anything under her watch. Nian Yuxian walked very slowly. As she walked, she kept sending out formation flags in all directions. If she wanted to reach the stone platform safely and retrieve the short sword, she would have to break the formation here. Although the formation here was extremely brilliant, it had been set up here for an unknown number of years. Hence, Nian Yuxian could still see some clues and flaws. Breaking the formation was not difficult for her. Lu Yi did not interfere. He only activated the spiritual tattoo of insight and observed silently, learning Nian Yuxian's method of breaking the formation. Layer after layer of the formation was broken. Nian Yuxian led Lu Yi across the stone bridge, which was only about 300 feet long, for almost 2 hours. Finally, they landed on the stone platform. Clang! The short sword stuck diagonally on the stone platform trembled slightly, letting out a clear sword hum. It seemed to have a mind of its own, joyful that it was about to welcome its new master. Nian Yuxian did not act rashly. Instead, she kept observing the surroundings, trying to see if there were any hidden formations. Lu Yi also activated the spiritual tattoo of insight. A moment later, Nian Yuxian let go of Lu Ye's hand and said, "Go back." Lu Yi pondered for a moment. His figure drifted backward and soon landed beside Ing Wuji. Ing Wuji asked in a low voice, "Lu Ye, that short sword, what's its quality?" They were too far apart, and he could not sense it clearly. Although he knew that he would not get a share of the good stuff here, he still wanted to know the details of the short sword. However, as expected, Lu Yi did not respond at all. He only stared at Nian Yuxian without blinking. On the stone platform, Nian Yuxian had already raised her hand to grab the short sword's hilt. The next moment, with a clang, the short sword was pulled out. She immediately looked around vigilantly, but it was quiet all around. There was nothing out of the ordinary. The treasure, she got it. Right when Thought Moon Immortal was delighted in her heart and was about to retreat, her expression suddenly changed because a vortex had strangely appeared before her without the slightest sign. Moreover, what caused her to feel both shocked and furious was that the short blade in her hand actually uncontrollably emitted an indescribable impact. In an instant, it filled her entire body. She was a divine sea realm cultivator, but this impact caused her spiritual power to scatter and her body to become unstable. She had been on guard against any hidden traps around her. This was because such a treasure was too easy to get. But in the end, there was still a flaw. The trap was not in the surroundings, but in the short sword itself. It could even be said that the formation she had broken earlier was just a smokescreen to confuse her. A huge suction force came from the vortex, and her body fell into it uncontrollably. As if sensing something, she turned around abruptly. On the other side of the stone bridge, Lu Ye's figure was like lightning, pouncing toward her. His expression was urgent, and he reached out to her from afar. "Don't come over!" Nian Yuxian shouted. But in the next instant, Lu Yi was in front of her. Nian Yuxian gritted her teeth and hurriedly reached out to grab Lu Ye's hand. Lu Yi stood on the stone platform and used both hands to grab Nian Yu. Immortal's arm, urging his entire body to move. But it did not move at all. At this moment, Nian Yuxian's body was mostly swallowed up by the vortex. If he had not arrived in time, she would have disappeared without a trace. He did not know what was going on inside the vortex, but this change was clearly not a good thing. At this moment, a chaotic clanging sound suddenly rang out, accompanied by Ing Wuji's strange cry. Lu Yi turned his head to look and saw Ing Wuji running towards him. He was not here to help him. Instead, the flying sword that had been swimming around the stone platform like a fish was chasing him. The cold killing intent forced him to flee in this direction. In desperation, Ing Wuji's speed was extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, he was in front of Lu Yi. Looking at the overwhelming sword light behind Ing Wuji, Lu Yi sighed in his heart. He did not use any more strength and instead plunged into the vortex. He really did not know what was going on inside the vortex, but if he did not hide in the vortex, he and Ing Wuji would most likely die. Without Lu Yi dragging her, Nian Yuxian's figure quickly disappeared into the vortex. The moment her figure disappeared, Lu Yi saw the self-blame in Nian Yuxian's eyes. Then he felt a warm and soft body pressed against him, and the world began to spin. And after Nian Yuxian and Lu Yi disappeared into the vortex, Ying Wuji followed in their footsteps. Many sword lights followed closely behind and disappeared without a trace. A moment later, the dust settled. There was only a stone bridge and an empty stone platform left. Endless darkness shrouded it. Chapter 9:23. As if he had fallen into an endless abyss, his body continued to sink and everything around him became illusory. Only the warm and soft body in his arms gave Lu Yi a sense of reality, allowing him to maintain a trace of clarity. After an unknown amount of time, his body and mind suddenly calmed down. When he came back to his senses, he suddenly heard an old voice in his ear. Weapons, the weapons of cultivators. There are strong and weak cultivators, good and bad weapons. Lu Yi was a little dizzy, and when he looked up, he saw a white-haired old man sitting in front of him, lecturing him earnestly. Lu Yi didn't understand the situation for a while. When he turned his head, he saw a pair of beautiful eyes looking at him with concern. It was Nian Yuxian. Their eyes met, and after confirming that they were all safe and sound, he finally felt relieved. Ying Wuji was also here, sitting on the other side of him. He was quietly looking around, seeming very suspicious. At this moment, the three of them were in front of a thatched hut. The old man was sitting upright, and the three of them were kneeling side by side in front of the old man, looking very respectful. The sound of something breaking through the air could be heard. The three of them looked up and saw a large number of flowing lights flying in the direction of the sound. It's those flying swords. Ying Wuji's eyes were sharp and he immediately saw the flowing lights. As soon as he finished speaking, many streams of light swept towards a nearby steep mountain. In the next moment, a series of clanging sounds could be heard as many flying swords were inserted into the steep mountain wall, leaving only the sword hilts outside. The old man's voice stopped, and he looked at the cliff full of flying swords with a complicated expression. He slowly said, "Sword Mountain is the foundation of my sword tool sect. Today, the three of you will become my disciples. When you refine a flying sword that can be ranked in Sword Mountain, you will be considered a master." There was a lot of information hidden in these words. At the very least, it allowed Lu Yi to understand something. This was the sword tool sect, and the mountain full of flying swords was Sword Mountain. The three of them were now taking this old man as their master. From the old man's words, the sword tool sect was probably a place to cultivate tool refiners. If they wanted to be a master, they must refine a flying sword that could be ranked in Sword Mountain. A secret realm. Lu Yi suddenly realized that the vortex on the stone platform was connected to a secret realm. It wasn't just the Spirit Stream battlefield and the Cloud River battlefield that had secret realms. The real secret realms that contained great opportunities were all in the 9 states. There were some secret realms that even Divine Sea realm cultivators could benefit greatly from. This arcane pocket realm was clearly different from what Lu Yi had experienced in the Spirit Stream battlefield and the Cloud River battlefield. At the very least, Missing Moon Immortal had also entered. In other words, this was a secret realm that could benefit even those in the Spiritual Sea stage. A secret realm like this could only be found by chance. He and Ying Wuji were both in the True Lake stage. If they could find some opportunities here, they would benefit for the rest of their lives. Ying Wuji also reacted, and his mood was immediately lifted. This time, he had no choice but to follow Lu Yi and the Thought Moon Immortal to Liyuan's one-line sky. He originally thought that he was just a guide, but who would have thought that such a good thing would happen? Apart from being happy, he was also on guard. He wasn't a fool. He naturally understood that opportunities meant risks. A secret realm that could allow those in the Divine Sea stage to enter. Who knew what kind of risks there would be? Lu Yi and Ying Wuji both had different thoughts. The Thought Moon Immortal slowly stood up and said with a frown, "You want me to become your disciple?" To become someone's disciple was to become their disciple. She was a Divine Sea stage cultivator. In the entire 9 states, she was already one of the top cultivators. Who in this world could be her master? What's more, she was a rogue cultivator. Since the day she started cultivating, she didn't have a master or a fellow disciple. With her current level of cultivation, she wouldn't find herself a master, even if it was a secret realm. You're not willing? The old man looked at the thought moon immortal indifferently, completely ignoring her cold expression. Whether you're willing or not, that depends on whether you have the ability. After saying this, the thought moon immortal shook her hand and stabbed the old man with her sword. What she held in her hand was the 2-foot short sword that she had taken from the stone platform. This kind of short sword was actually more suitable for her as a ghost cultivator's weapon, not as a sword cultivator's weapon. With her ghost cultivation attainments, coupled with such a sharp sword, if she really succeeded in her sneak attack, no divine C-stage cultivator in 9 regions could withstand it. But even so, the power of this sword was peerless. Lu Yi and Ying Wuji both hurriedly dodged, for fear of splashing their blood. The two of them had no doubt about the strength of the thought moon immortal. Moreover, in any case, they suddenly came to such a secret realm and suddenly had to worship such an old man as their master. Both of them were somewhat reluctant. If the thought moon immortal could resolve this matter, it wouldn't be a bad thing. However, in the next moment, the pupils of Lu Yi and Ying Wuji shrank, and the eyes of the thought moon immortal were also filled with shock. Because the old man sitting upright didn't move. He just raised his hand, stretched out 2 fingers, and lightly caught the short sword in the hand of the thought moon immortal. The old man slightly narrowed his eyes, which flashed with a cold light, and faintly said, "The willow catkin was cast by this old man. This old man knows its power much better than you do." The thought moon immortal exerted her strength, but she still couldn't pull the short sword away from the old man's 2 fingers. Her heart was in turmoil, and only then did she realize that she had underestimated the old man's ability. But, was there really such a strong person in this world? Your temperament is not steady enough. Just because you have some cultivation base, you are arrogant. You are not suitable to be my disciple. Go. With that, he suddenly spat out a sword light from his mouth, which went straight to the thought moon immortal. The thought moon immortal's beautiful face turned pale in an instant, because the strength of this sword light was something she had never seen before in her life. The old man's seemingly casual attack was already stronger than her full-strength attack. The moment the sword light came out of the old man's mouth, he also released the fingers that were holding the willow catkin short sword. The thought moon immortal took advantage of the situation to retreat, holding the sword in front of her. Accompanied by a clang, the thought moon immortal gave a muffled groan, and her entire body flew out like a willow catkin. In the blink of an eye, she disappeared without a trace. No one knew where she had been sent to. The old man's voice sounded again. "Since the willow catkin has fallen into your hands, it means that it is fated to be with you. I hope you will not bury it." But he had no intention of leaving the willow catkin short sword behind. Lu Yi and Ying Wuji stood not far away, dumbfounded as they stared at this unbelievable scene, not daring to move. It was only when the old man turned his head to look at them that the two hurriedly walked back, side by side, and obediently sat in front of the old man. Ying Wuji even shouted, "Disciple Ying Wuji greets master." What thought moon immortal? What 10,000 feet iron? After seeing this old man's terrifying methods, Ying Wuji finally understood what it meant to say that there was always someone stronger. Taking such a master as his master was not shameful at all. He, Ying Wuji, had always been a flexible person. First, he had taken Lu Ye as his eldest senior brother, and today he had taken on a master. The old man smiled faintly. "It's still too early to talk about taking on a master. Today, I am only taking the 2 of you into my sword instrument sect. My sword instrument sect has always been strict in accepting disciples, so whether or not you 2 can stay will depend on your own abilities." Ying Wuji sat upright, feeling a little disappointed. He had thought he had managed to latch onto a big thigh, but who knew this old man wasn't taking him in as a disciple at all. My sword instrument sect's disciples are not only the most outstanding artifact refining grandmasters, but also the most outstanding sword cultivators. All flying swords used are refined by the sect's own hands. The 2 of you must remember this. Lu Yi and Ying Wuji responded together, as obedient as kittens. This old man is Kong Kong, the 163rd generation sect master of sword instrument sect. Today, the two of you will be taking me as your master, so you must remember the sect's rules and commandments. What followed was a series of complicated sect rules, but whether it was Lu Yi or Ying Wuji, both of them were cultivators, so it was not difficult for them to remember these things. Just as he was speaking, Kong Kong suddenly frowned and looked at Lu Ye's waist, revealing a displeased expression. You use a saber? Lu Ye's expression turned serious as he quickly realized where the problem was. It seemed that not only in the 9 prefectures, those who used sabers looked down on those who used swords, and those who used swords looked down on those who used sabers. The sword instrument sect was the same. Silently putting away the mountain pan saber, Lu Yi took out a long sword and hung it on his waist, calmly saying, "That is just disciples' spoils of war." Disciple is actually a sword cultivator. Ying Wuji almost laughed out loud. But after noticing Lu Ye's sharp gaze, he quickly sat up straight. Kong Kong's expression relaxed a little. Remember, those who use sabers are all boorish men. The sword is the king of weapons. Yes. Lu Yi respectfully responded. Boorish men are not boorish men. You have the biggest fist, you have the final say. The two of you are new here today, so go ahead. Tomorrow, this old man will teach you the method of refining weapons. When the two of you are able to refine flying swords, I will teach you the way of the sword. Lu Yi and Ying Wuji respectfully withdrew. When they looked back, the sword instrument sect's sect master, who claimed to be Kong Kong, had disappeared. No one knew where he went, and only a thatched hut stood in the same place. The two looked at each other, and their hearts trembled. You explore the surrounding environment. Lu Yi ordered Ying Wuji and chased in the direction where Thought Moon Immortal had been sent flying. The thatched hut was located in a valley, and one side of it was the Sword Mountain, which was full of flying swords just now. It was a spectacular sight. Ying Wuji also had the same intention. As a newcomer, it was naturally important to explore the environment first. It was even more important to figure out what kind of world this was and what kind of test was waiting for them. The two separated, and Lu Yi went to look for Thought Moon Immortal. She soon found her, because Thought Moon Immortal had not gone far and was standing at the entrance of the valley. She had changed into clean clothes, but she had consumed a lot of energy before, and there were many injuries on her body, and her face was still a little pale. Seeing that she was safe and sound, Lu Yi was a little relieved and stepped forward. My lady. Thought Moon Immortal nodded. Did that old mister make things difficult for you? Before, she didn't put Kong Kong in her eyes, but after the confrontation, Thought Moon Immortal already understood that Kong Kong's cultivation was definitely much higher than hers. In other words, Kong Kong was most likely above the Divine Sea realm. This made Thought Moon Immortal very interested, and she had the idea of exploring, because the Divine Sea realm cultivators in 9 regions had been exploring the road of cultivation for many years. They could feel that the Divine Sea realm was not the end of a cultivator's journey, but they had no clue how to take that step. Seeing Kong Kong today, Thought Moon Immortal naturally wanted to find out. Unfortunately, she had offended him as soon as she came, and now it was not good to ask anything. Chapter 9:24. As they were talking, Ying Wuji flew over and landed, looking helplessly at Lu Yi. Didn't I tell you to scout the environment? Lu Yi frowned. This guy was too careless. Ying Wuji said, what you can see is all that can be scouted. What do you mean? Lu Yi frowned. Thought Moon Immortal said, don't blame him. This is a very small arcane realm. The entire arcane realm is just the valley and the spirit peak that we can see now, so there's no need to scout anything. Lu Yi was stunned. If Ying Wuji had said that, he wouldn't have believed it, but since it came from Thought Moon Immortal, he had no choice but to believe it. After Thought Moon Immortal was sent flying from the thatched hut, she had clearly scouted the surroundings to come to this conclusion. How could there be such a small arcane realm in this world? The arcane realms that Lu Yi had experienced before were all set in a realm. Even the smallest arcane realm of the myriad beasts was 30% the size of the Spirit Stream battlefield. It seems that this really is a legacy arcane realm, Thought Moon Immortal said thoughtfully. Ing Wuji frowned. Senior means to say that this arcane realm was specially created for a certain legacy? Hearing him say this, Lu Yi immediately thought of Hua Xiai. He didn't know what the arcane realm that Hua Xiai had inherited looked like, but Hua Xiai had mentioned that the legacy arcane realm seemed to be a very small arcane realm. Because this kind of arcane realm was specially created for a certain legacy, it didn't need to be too big. After passing the test in the arcane realm and obtaining the legacy, one could leave safely. Did that old man ask you to do anything? Thought Moon Immortal asked. Lu Yi nodded. He calls himself Kong Kong, and is the 163rd sect master of the Sword Artifact sect. He asked Ing Wuji and me to learn the art of forging artifacts from him, and after we have mastered the art, he will teach us the way of the sword. Thought Moon Immortal understood. It seems that this is the test of the arcane realm. She calmed herself down and looked at Lu Yi. This is an opportunity. Since you have encountered it, there is no reason to miss it. You can cultivate and learn in peace. Understood. Lu Yi replied. To be honest, he was not very interested in refining weapons. The main reason was that he had already practiced both the way of spiritual tattoo and the way of formation. He knew that a person's energy was limited. If he spent too much energy on the outer way, his own cultivation would definitely be affected. His master had taught him the Tao of inscription before, and he had practiced it for a period of time. However, in the end, he didn't cultivate it deeply because he didn't have enough energy. Furthermore, in a world like the 9 provinces, if one really needed anything, one could purchase it from the Tianji treasury or find someone to refine it for them. There was no need for one to be proficient in this field. Not all good eaters were chefs. The logic was the same. Moreover, he also had the War Merit Pavilion. There were countless good things inside, and as long as he had enough war merit, he could exchange for them. But if this is a test of the hidden territory, then I have to learn it. Senior, what's up with that emptiness sect master's cultivation? Ing Wuji gathered his courage and asked. Just now, the scene of the empty sword chi sending the thought of Moon Immortal flying had scared him to death. His cultivation base. Thought Moon Immortal revealed a pensive expression. Much higher than mine. Above the divine sea, is there really a path ahead? Ing Wuji became excited, causing Lu Yi to give him a sidelong glance. He didn't know what a true lake stage cultivator was so excited about. Thought Moon Immortal leisurely said, "This is exactly what the divine sea stage cultivators of the 9 provinces have been searching for," Ing Wuji said. Divine sea stage cultivators of the 9 provinces have searched for nothing, but that emptiness sect master's cultivation base is above the divine sea. Doesn't this mean that he is not a cultivator of the 9 provinces? Thought Moon Immortal looked up at him. You know a lot. Ing Wuji sighed. There are many opportunities in the 9 provinces and many inheritances. Since ancient times, many people have speculated that there may be many inheritances hidden in the world of the 9 provinces, and for various reasons, they fell into the 9 provinces. At first, I didn't believe it, but after what happened in the Wushuang continent, I have no choice but to believe it. The matter of the Wushuang continent was not a secret now. Not to mention that the fusion of domains in the Yunhe battlefield had long been known to the world. At present, many cultivators of the Wushuang continent had begun to walk in the 9 provinces, and there were even people who had founded sections. The information transmission in the 9 provinces was convenient, so naturally, everyone knew about it. Thought Moon Immortal had also heard about the matters of the Wushuang continent, so when she heard Ing Wuji's words, she understood what was going on. Perhaps this opportunity came from outside the 9 provinces, or perhaps it came from within the 9 provinces. Don't forget that the historical records of this era are only a few thousand years. No one knows what the 9 provinces looked like thousands of years ago. Whether there were cultivators above the divine sea stage, no one knows. If the sword tool sect was a sect from thousands of years ago, then this secret realm was a remnant from before this era. Senior is right. Ing Wuji humbly accepted the teachings and looked very honest. In any case, that emptiness sect master is not a living person. It is very likely that he is the reappearance of some means of the heavens, or it may be an obsession left behind by a powerhouse. His cultivation base is indeed higher than mine when he was alive. When you two get along with him, you must be careful. For the first time, Ing Wuji felt the concern from Thought Moon Immortal. Although he understood that this was just incidental, he was still very touched and couldn't help but nod. Senior, don't worry. Brother Lu is the best at getting along with people. He will not offend the Emptiness Sect Master. I, Ing Wuji, will also follow his lead. Lu Yi was too lazy to pay attention to him and just looked at Thought Moon Immortal. My lord, what about you? Me? Thought Moon Immortal was startled for a moment. She looked down at the 2-foot short sword in her hand. Just take advantage of this time to refine this sword. You don't have to worry about it. Lu Yi nodded and turned to order Ing Wuji. Go cut some wood. Ing Wuji was puzzled. For this time, we don't know how long we will stay here. There is only one thatched hut here. We can't eat and sleep in the open. That makes sense. Ing Wuji nodded. Then why don't we go together? Lu Ye's gaze became fierce. Ing Wuji shouted to Thought Moon Immortal. Senior, you saw it. He has been bullying people like this. Thought Moon Immortal smiled. It was the first time she saw two people from opposing camps get along like this. She said, You go by yourself. I have something to say to Lu Yi. Ing Wuji immediately became obedient. After Ing Wuji left, Lu Yi said, My lord, do you want me to inquire about the mystery above the deity ocean? Thought Moon Immortal shook her head slowly. This arcane realm is for the inheritance of the Sword Instrument sect, not for cultivation. So even if you inquire, you may not be able to find anything. Instead, you may say something wrong. What I want to tell you is that this arcane realm is not as peaceful as it looks. My lord, you mean, based on the current situation, the willow catkins are not an opportunity, but a bait. Thought Moon Immortal raised the short sword in her hand and said slowly, using the willow catkins as bait to make people greedy and enter this arcane realm of inheritance, pass the test, and obtain the inheritance of the Sword Instrument sect. This is also a common trick used in many places of inheritance. I can only blame myself for being greedy and not seeing through this layer. But if this is really the case, then since ancient times, has no one else entered here? That place is indeed hidden, but if I can find it, others can naturally find it too. So before us, it is very likely that someone has already been here. But where are they? Lu Yi was slightly horrified. Of course, I'm not saying that Kong Kong is a bad person. But since this arcane realm of inheritance has been preserved until now, it means that so far, no one has passed the test. Even if someone had entered before, they died here. Thought test to obtain the inheritance of the Sword Instrument sect. This is also a common trick used in many places of inheritance. I can only blame myself for being greedy and not seeing through this layer. But if this is really the case, then since ancient times, no one has entered here? That place is indeed hidden, but if I can find it, others can naturally find it too. So before us, it is very likely that someone has already been here. But where are they? Lu Yi was slightly horrified. Of course, I'm not saying that Kong Kong is a bad person. But since this arcane realm of inheritance has been preserved until now, it means that so far, no one has passed the test. Even if someone had entered before, they died here. Thought Moon Immortal stared at Lu Yi with a serious expression. This is the danger of the arcane realm of inheritance. Since you're here, you either obtain the inheritance and leave safely, or you'll never be able to escape. Lu Yi listened silently, understanding tacitly. Sir, you mean to say that it's very difficult to obtain the inheritance here and pass Kong Kong's test? No matter what, you have to be mentally prepared. Lu Yi nodded slightly, but soon thought of something. Sir, there's a problem. What? If the willow catkins are really bait to lure people into this arcane realm of inheritance, then there shouldn't be so much danger. You're powerful enough to pass through that passage and obtain the willow catkins, but others may not have the ability to do so. Perhaps they'll be killed in that passage before they even get close to the willow catkins. This doesn't match the original intention of the arcane realm of inheritance to lure people in. If they really wanted to lure people in, then it should be as simple as possible. It could even be said that as early as the first time Thought Moon Immortal came here, she had already obtained the willow catkins and been lured into this arcane realm. Perhaps that's the case. Nian Yu Immortal did not deny Lu Ye's judgment. Her gaze was faint as she looked in the direction of the thatched hut. But what if that Kong Kong can sense the situation outside to a certain extent, and can even control the restriction outside? Lu Ye's expression turned serious. If that was the case, then it could be explained. The reason Thought Moon Immortal had not been able to obtain the willow catkins was that Kong Kong felt that she was not suitable to inherit the mantle of the sword instrument sect, so he had been stopping her. However, this time she had brought Lu Yi and Ing Wuji over, which gave Kong Kong hope and let her go. However, because Thought Moon Immortal had previous experience, the test could not be too easy, otherwise it would arouse her vigilance. She had to use all her strength to pass through that passage, and obtaining the willow catkins was the best result. If that was the case, then Kong Kong had gone through a lot of trouble. No matter what, it won't be easy to pass the test here. You have to be careful. I'll do my best. Lu Yi nodded. Even if he couldn't do it, there was still Ing Wuji. If he couldn't do it, then they could only think of another way to leave this arcane realm. However, this was a story for later. A moment later, Ing Wuji returned. Lu Yi worked with him to build 3 wooden huts at the entrance of the valley, which would serve as their temporary residence for the time being. The 3 wooden huts were separated by several feet. Lu Yi was in the middle, Ing Wuji was on the left, and Thought Moon Immortal was on the right. This way, it would be convenient for them to take care of each other. Chapter 925. During this period, Lu Yi was a little unwilling to give up and went out to investigate the surrounding environment. However, he found that it was indeed as Thought Moon Immortal and Ing Wuji had said. He could see everything in the mystic realm. The entrance of the valley was not connected to the outside world. It was chaos and there was no way forward. Lu Yi did not dare to rashly go in. He tried to throw a spirit stone in, but there was no sound at all. He did not know what would happen if he entered. There was no sun, moon, or stars in this small mystic realm, but there were. Day and night it was really strange. After a night of rest, Lu Yi and Ing Wuji obediently went to the thatched hut the next day. In front of the thatched hut, Kong Kong was already sitting there with 2 futons in front of him. Lu Yi and Ing Wuji bowed and sat upright, listening to Kong Kong's teachings. He didn't ask the 2 of them if they had any prior experience in artifact forging. In any case, he taught them from the very basics. But then again, although he looked old, he really had a way of teaching people. Many of his explanations were simple and easy to understand, allowing Lu Yi and Lu Li to understand clearly, benefiting them greatly. It was like this for several days. It was not until 3 days had passed that he began to teach the 2 practical things. In the 9 provinces, no matter what kind of outer Tao one cultivated, they all needed to rely on spirit inscriptions. Array Tao had its own specialized spirit inscriptions. Alchemy had its own spirit inscriptions, and refining naturally had its own spirit inscriptions. For many outer Tao, spirit inscriptions were the foundation. Therefore, outstanding spirit inscriptionists, no matter what kind of outer Tao they cultivated, could achieve twice the result with half the effort. After teaching the 2 the basic knowledge of refining, Kong Kong began to teach them the construction of some spirit inscriptions. This was Lu Ye's strength, but he did not use it. He did not completely reveal his talent in the Tao of spirit inscriptions, only using half of his strength. Even so, his performance was not bad. Although Ing Wuji's attainments in the Tao of spirit inscriptions were not as good as Lu Ye's, since he had cultivated Array Tao, he naturally had come into contact with spirit inscriptions. It was just that he had not learned the specialized spirit inscriptions for refining. However, the construction was not as smooth as Lu Ye's, and it seemed bumpy, but he could still barely complete the requirements. The days passed one by one, and nothing happened. It was not until half a month later, after Lu Yi finished constructing a spirit inscription, he finally could not help but ask, "Sect Master, little brother has something to ask." "Speak." Kong Kong looked over warmly. Recently, Lu Ye's expression had undoubtedly made him very satisfied. Lu Ye's talent in spiritual tattoos aside, even if he restrained his strength, his performance was not bad. Now, with Ing Wuji beside him as a comparison, his talent was even more outstanding. This made Kong Kong feel like he had picked up a treasure. The equipment refining sect finally had a successor. Naturally, he had great expectations for Lu Yi. Sect Master, how long do you think it will take for us to refine a flying sword that meets the requirements with our current progress? Kong Kong laughed. What? You can't wait any longer? He paused for a moment and said, this old man can be considered to have none. He's the most outstanding person in the sword instrument sect in the past hundreds of years, but it took me 5 years to refine a flying sword that was suitable for me. 5 years. When Lu Yi and Ing Wuji heard this, their hearts turned cold. 5 years might not be a long time for some Divine Sea Realm cultivators, but for them, it was a long time. For such a young and hot-blooded young man, it seemed incomparably long. It had to be known that it had only been less than 3 years since Lu Yi stepped onto the path of cultivation. If he stayed here for 5 years, and this was with Kong Kong himself as the standard, perhaps it would take a little longer. Moreover, refining a qualified flying sword was only the beginning. Kong Kong had said before that after refining a qualified flying sword, he would teach the two of them the way of sword cultivation. It sounded like a good thing, but this kind of good thing required a lot of time to digest. Who could bear such an opportunity? No wonder the land of inheritance had been left behind until now. Even if someone had come in a few years ago, they might not have been able to withstand such a long time. Lu Yi felt a headache coming on. He couldn't stay in this place forever. If he stayed like this, he wouldn't be able to leave if he didn't want to pass the test. As for being rough with his opponent, the result of being rough would definitely not be good. Many thoughts flashed through his mind, and Lu Yi simply boasted shamelessly, Sect Master, it's too boring to study spiritual tattoos all day without refining. No matter what, it was always right to speed up the progress of learning refining. Kong Kong smiled and said, the way of refining is broad and profound. This is just the beginning. Don't be impatient, don't be impatient. You all need to know that haste makes waste. Lu Yi straightened his neck, but Sect Master, disciple feels that disciple has already mastered these spiritual tattoos and doesn't need to learn anything else. Now disciple just wants to practice refining and inherit the legacy of our sword tool sect as soon as possible, making our sect bigger and stronger as soon as possible and bringing glory to our sect. Ing Wuji understood and hurriedly nodded. Disciple thinks so too. Kong Kong looked at Lu Yi solemnly and remained silent. However, he was very satisfied with Lu Ye's recent performance. He was indeed very satisfied and tolerant. After pondering for a moment, he opened his mouth and said, since that's the case, this sect leader will give the two of you a test. If you can complete it, this sect leader will agree to your request. Sect Master, please ask for instructions. Kong Kong spread out his hands. In the next moment, spiritual powers surged and turned into visible patterns. They constantly changed and turned into spiritual tattoos used for refining. Lu Yi and Ing Wuji watched with rapt attention. They found that some of these spiritual tattoos had been taught by Kong Kong, and some had not been taught. After a moment, Kong Kong withdrew his hand and said while stroking his beard, just now, this sect master showed you a total of 10 spiritual tattoos. If you can complete them in 2 hours, you will pass this test. Ing Wuji's face was bitter. He didn't need to try to know that he would definitely fail. Because of the 10 spiritual tattoos, 5 of them had not been taught by Kong Kong at all. Now that he had only seen them once, it was impossible to learn them. He turned his head to look at Lu Yi, only to see that Lu Yi had already spread out his palm and began to construct. At this moment, Lu Yi was extremely glad that he had held back when he learned these spiritual tattoos and did not reveal all his talent. Otherwise, there would probably be no test. Kong Kong thought that he and Ing Wuji would definitely not be able to pass the test, so he came up with this difficult problem. However, Lu Yi was confident that he could complete it. As the spiritual tattoos were constructed on Lu Ye's hand, Kong Kong's expression gradually became surprised, because he found that he had underestimated this disciple's heavens. Talent. 4 hours passed in a flash. When the time was up, Lu Yi was trying to construct the last spiritual tattoo. This spiritual tattoo was quite complicated. He had already tried more than 10 times, but he failed every time. After another hour, Lu Yi finally succeeded in constructing the 10th spiritual tattoo. Looking up at Kong Kong with a somewhat haggard expression, the sword tool sect master nodded and said, "In this case, you will pass the test. Go back and rest for a day. Come back to this old man tomorrow and I will teach you the method of refining." Lu Yi let out a long sigh. Spending half a month to pass the first test was nothing to be happy about. As for what to do next, he had no idea. He had no clue. Thinking about it, he could only try to speed up the progress of refining and find a way to leave at the same time. "Sect Master, what about me?" Ing Wuji asked. "You continue to cultivate spiritual tattoos." Kong Kong casually replied. Of the 2 disciples taken in, it was enough to have one with outstanding talent. The other was just incidental and did not count on anything. Ing Wuji's face was covered in tears. When he returned to the wooden house, Lu Yi suddenly saw the figure of Thought Moon Immortal. She was sitting on a chair in front of the wooden house, and Hupo was squatting on her legs. After being in contact with her for a long time, Hupo was not afraid of her anymore. Instead, under her touch, he snored loudly. Lu Yi hurriedly went forward. "Milady." In this half a month, he and Ing Wuji had been learning spiritual tattoos at Kong Kong's place. Thought Moon Immortal had been in seclusion, refining the willow catkin dagger. It was not until today that she came out. "How is it?" Thought Moon Immortal asked. Lu Yi truthfully told her about his experience in the past half a month. There was nothing much to say. It was nothing more than constantly learning to construct spiritual tattoos for refining. Then he talked about what happened just now. Thought Moon Immortal nodded. "Now it seems that only by speeding up the progress can you leave here as soon as possible. But no matter how fast you speed up the progress, the time spent will not be too short. If only we could invite the Tianji Pillar." Lu Yi sighed. If they could invite the Tianji Pillar, they could use it to teleport out of here. However, things like inviting the Tianji Pillar could only be achieved in the Cloud River battlefield. It was impossible in 9 regions, and it was also impossible in such a secret realm. At least he and Ing Wuji had something to do recently. Thought Moon Immortal was pitiful, trapped here with nothing to do. "Milady, what else do you want?" Thought Moon Immortal shook her head. Lu Yi was about to leave, but he heard her say, "If I take all the flying swords on the Sword Mountain, take it all. Will the old guy kick us out?" "Unlikely." Lu Yi shook his head. He silently added in his heart, "The most likely thing is that you will be taught a lesson. There's no harm in trying." As Thought Moon Immortal spoke, she soared into the sky. Hupo was suddenly thrown out, startled from his sleep. When he woke up, he meowed miserably and fell to the ground in a hurry. Lu Yi looked up and saw Thought Moon Immortal's figure quickly rushing towards the Sword Mountain. However, just as she reached the range of the Sword Mountain, her elegant figure fell uncontrollably. Lu Ye's eyelids twitched, and he immediately realized. There was probably a no-fly restriction on the Sword Mountain, so it was impossible to fly up. Falling to the ground in a sorry state, Thought Moon Immortal did not give up. She climbed up on foot and soon arrived at the location of the first flying sword. However, before she could reach out to pull out the sword, a sudden change occurred. An illusory figure appeared like a ghost, slowly pulling out the sword from the Sword Mountain. He saluted Thought Moon Immortal. "Sword Tool Sect's 36th generation disciple, Wang Yang, please enlighten me." Chapter 926. The person who called himself Wang Yang was clearly not a living person. He was more like a spirit or an obsession. However, he was pale and lifeless, as if he could dissipate at any time. But his sword manipulation technique was extremely impressive. Lu Yi watched from afar. She saw flying swords flying back and forth at the foot of the Sword Mountain. The sword light was wanton as Nian Yu Immortal fought with it. What Wang Yang displayed was a technique that could only be performed by a Spirit Sea realm cultivator. Even the flying swords on the Sword Mountain were so powerful? Lu Yi was extremely shocked. And this was only the first flying sword at the foot of the mountain. No one knew what would happen if they went further up. After a while, the battle ended. Wang Yang's figure disappeared. Only a flying sword fell in front of Nian Yu Immortal. Nian Yu Immortal was deep in thought. She picked up the flying sword on the ground and continued forward. Soon, a second figure blocked her path. Lu Yi observed for a while and roughly understood the mystery of the sword mountain. Almost every flying sword was a sword left behind by a spirit sea realm cultivator. There must be a wisp of the owner's will or spirit left in them. Once someone climbed the sword mountain, the power of the flying sword would be triggered. This was also a test. A test of the sword tool sex sword Dao. Lu Yi was enlightened. When the three of them entered this secret realm, Nian Yu Immortal was sent flying by Kong Kong because she spoke rudely. But now, it seemed that it was not just a simple lesson. Kong Kong intended for her to inherit the sword tool sex sword Dao. With Kong Kong's eyesight, she could definitely tell that Nian Yu Immortal was a sword cultivator. Letting a divine ocean realm cultivator like her ascend the sword tool sex sword Dao was naturally better than choosing two true lake realm cultivators. And what Lu Yi and Ying Wuji needed to do was to cultivate the sword tool sex sword Dao. Lu Yi could not help much with Nian Yu Immortal ascending the sword mountain. So after watching for a while, she turned and returned to her wooden hut to conserve energy and prepare for tomorrow's sword Dao. The next day, Lu Yi and Ying Wuji came to the straw hut together. Kong Kong first passed a spiritual pattern to Ying Wuji. Then, under Ying Wuji's resentful annoyance, he led Lu Yi in a direction. After a while, they arrived in front of a stone wall. The stone wall was smooth and flat, and it was obvious that someone had chiseled it. With a wave of his hand, the stone wall slid to the side, revealing a passage that led downwards. An astonishing heat wave is coming from the tunnel. This place is our sect's weapon refinement workshop. It is maintained by many exquisite grand formations and is the most important foundation of our sect. Many of our sect's flying swords come from this place. If it was in the past, ordinary disciples wouldn't be able to enter. Kong Kong let out a long sigh, reminiscing about the sect's past glory. Let's go. He called out to Lu Yi and led the way. The deeper they went, the hotter the temperature became. If an ordinary true lake realm cultivator came here, they would have to circulate their spiritual energy to resist. However, for Lu Yi, who had a fire attribute spiritual energy, such an environment was not harsh at all, but comfortable and pleasant. However, even he would have to slightly circulate his spiritual energy to resist the burning sensation if he were to go any deeper. He didn't know how deep he had gone when a huge karst cave suddenly appeared in front of him. Inside the karst cave, the environment was harsh and the heat wave swept through, distorting the void. Various weapon refinement tables of various sizes were distributed throughout the karst cave. All kinds of refining tools were placed according to their categories. Even if no one had come here for a long time, it still appeared to be in good order. Kong Kong led Lu Yi to the smallest refining table and said, "There is the fire of the earth lung underground. When refining, you can use the fire of the earth lung to temper the materials, saving time and effort." As he said this, he raised his hand and pointed at a certain part of the refining table, activating the restriction. In an instant, at the corner of the refining table, a dragon head spewed out flames. There are also many things to pay attention to when refining tools. These things can't be explained verbally. The many refining tools on the table began to briefly introduce the functions of these things to Lu Yi. Lu Yi listened quietly, but his eyes were fixed on the dragon's head that was spewing flames. This thing was the fire of the earth lung. Since it was fire, the talent tree should be able to absorb and devour it. Although it was hidden underground, it should not be difficult for Lu Yi to devour it now. The roots of the talent tree could be extended. After the talent tree transformed, its need for fuel greatly increased. Lu Yi had to be very heavy. Type 5 When devouring and absorbing external forces for cultivation, the consumption of fuel was very serious. It should not be a problem to store the fire of the earth lung and use it as 9 poles of the big girl tree. Kong Kong was still talking to Lu Yi, but he did not expect Lu Yi to have such an idea. During the talk, he also let Lu Yi try out the refining tools, and Lu Yi naturally complied. He said, "Why don't you try it out? This old man is now refining a handle. You watch and learn with your heart. How much you can learn will depend on your ability and comprehension. Yes. Lu Yi respectfully replied. The next moment, Kong Kong turned his palm and took out a piece of mineral the size of a human head from somewhere. He placed it on the refining table and urged the fire of the earth lung to smelt it. At the same time, he said, if you want to refine a good flying sword, you must choose good materials. The way of refining tools starts with the selection of materials and forging materials. It is like a person's cultivation. Only with a good foundation can the following steps be better. The next half of the day was spent in Kong Kong's refining and explaining. His movements were not fast, obviously to make it easier for Lu Yi to observe and learn. It was not until a new long sword was out of the furnace that the demonstration was over. Although Lu Yi wanted to leave this place as soon as possible, seeing a weapon refining grandmaster refine a flying sword in such a short time with his own eyes, he couldn't help but feel admiration for this young man. Moreover, this long sword contained 72 restrictions, which made it a flying sword of the magic tool level. Such a flying sword, if placed in the Tianji treasure house, could be sold for tens of thousands of merit points. Tens of thousands of merit points were not much for Lu Yi, but for most cultivators, it was not a small number that could be ignored. How much do you understand? Kong Kong asked. Lu Yi frowned. 30%? Yes. Kong Kong nodded. It's good that you can understand 30%, but if you really want to use it, you may not even understand 5%. Disciple will try it? Lu Yi volunteered. Kong Kong happily said, you do it. The refining materials were provided by Kong Kong, and the quality was not high. After all, it was for Lu Yi to practice, so naturally he did not use good things. The quality was low, so the refining difficulty was also low. But even so, Lu Yi's progress was bumpy. Fortunately, refining tools had one advantage, and that was, if the refining failed, it could be reforged in the furnace. Unlike alchemy, once the refining failed, everything would be ruined. Therefore, refining tools saved a lot of raw materials compared to alchemy. When Lu Yi was refining tools, Kong Kong would give him pointers from time to time. He was extremely patient, and Lu Yi also studied diligently, making rapid progress. For 3 days in a row, the two of them spent their time like this. Only the sound of hammering could be heard in the whole refining workshop. Until 3 days later, Lu Yi held a long sword in his hand, looking dispirited. In 3 days, he had refined his first long sword. Although the appearance was sloppy, the quality was not complimentary. It contained only 5 restrictions, and it was just a low-grade spirit weapon. Kong Kong was very happy. Not bad, not bad, your talent in spirit patterns is really high. So, when refining tools, you can also get twice the result with half the effort. Refining tools was not just about refining the shape of a spirit weapon. If it was only like this, then ordinary blacksmiths could do it, and Lu Yi did not need to use a refining table. With his current cultivation and methods, Kong Kong could mold some low-quality raw materials into any shape he wanted. But the refining of a cultivator was to melt restrictions into the spirit weapon while molding the shape of the spirit weapon. This was the key. A spirit weapon without restrictions could not be used at all. Lu Yi had refined a lot of array flags before, but compared with refining array flags and refining tools, there was simply no comparison. How much time did it take Sect Master to reach this level? Lu Yi asked. An expression of reminiscence appeared on Kong Kong's face as he said, this old man spent 8 days, and the quality of the sword I refined wasn't as good as yours. There were only 3 restrictions. If you can maintain this progress, you will be able to refine a flying sword that meets the requirements within 3 years. 3 years is still long. Go rest, but don't forget to reflect on your gains and losses. In the future, come to the thatched hut every morning and this old man will teach you the wonders of refining tools. In the afternoon, come here and start refining tools. If there is anything you do not understand, you can ask this old man at any time. Yes. Returning to the wooden hut from the refining workshop, Lu Yi glanced in the direction of Sword Mountain. Thought Moon Immortal was still climbing the mountain, fighting with the obsession and spirit in the flying swords, But her progress was not slow. At this moment, she had already climbed 100 zhang of Sword Mountain. Hu Peng, who had stayed here, came over and looked at Lu Yi with concern. I used up a bit of energy, but I'll be fine after some rest. Lu Yi said. These words were naturally for Yi to hear. Since coming to this secret realm, Yi did not dare to show her face. After all, Kong Kong's cultivation was too frightening. Returning to the wooden hut, she did not meditate to rest, but fell asleep. When she woke up, she felt refreshed. According to Kong Kong's previous instructions, she first went to the thatched hut to find him and listen to him talk about the essence of refining tools. In the afternoon, under Ing Wuji's annoyance, she went to the refining workshop. This time, Kong Kong did not accompany her. Lu Yi did not dare to be careless and continued to refine tools. Only the heavens knew if Kong Kong had any means to monitor the situation inside the refining workshop, so he still had to continue refining tools. Moreover, if he really wanted to leave this place as soon as possible, he had to pass Kong Kong's test as soon as possible. 3 years was too long. Lu Yi set the standard for himself to leave this secret realm in half a year at most. Within half a year, he had to leave this secret realm. If he stayed here for too long, only the heavens knew how worried his second senior sister and the others would be. He clicked to download the best book-chasing app. Many readers use this to read books aloud. 9 restrictions was the limit of a low-grade spirit artifact. Any higher and it would be a middle-grade spirit artifact. In the past, Lu Yi didn't really understand the difference between 9 restrictions and 10 restrictions. He simply felt that the difference of 1 restriction wasn't much of a difference. But when he actually started refining, he realized that there was a big difference. This was because the difficulty of refining a 10-restriction spirit artifact was incomparable to refining a 9-restriction spirit artifact. In another 10 days, Lu Yi could already easily refine a mid-grade spirit artifact, and the quality was not bad. A month later, the first high-grade spiritual weapon was born in his hands. At this time, Ing Wuji had just passed the first test and entered the artifact refining workshop to begin refining with Lu Yi. Comparing the two, it was obvious who was superior. Kong Kong's expectations of Lu Yi grew even higher because Lu Yi's performance so far had repeatedly exceeded his expectations, even to the point of being somewhat unbelievable. He didn't know that the reason why Lu Yi could make such rapid progress was not only that he was a spiritual tattooist, but also that he had divine thoughts. When urging his divine thoughts, Lu Yi could clearly sense the situation inside the spirit artifact he was refining. In this way, he could adjust his strength accordingly. Spiritual sense was indeed of great help to weapon refinement. The more outstanding Lu Yi's performance, the worse Ing Wuji seemed to be. Originally, Kong Kong would take the initiative to teach Ing Wuji some things about refining, but after a month, unless Ing Wuji took the initiative to ask, Kong Kong no longer took the initiative to teach him anything. Obviously, with Lu Yi as his hope, Kong Kong didn't care at all whether Ing Wuji was there or not. Ing Wuji didn't complain. Kong Kong didn't care about him, so his days were leisurely. He even hoped that Lu Yi could refine a flying sword that met the requirements as soon as possible and pass the test of the mystic realm. Then he could also go out. Like Lu Yi, he didn't have much interest in the Tao of refining. Interesting, before he had no choice but to do it. Now, if he wasn't willing, he would go cultivate on his own and be very happy. The days in the mystic realm were dull and monotonous. Lu Yi was completely immersed in refining. He didn't even go back to the wooden house and spent almost all his time in the smithing workshop. Occasionally, Kong Kong would go to the smithing workshop to teach Lu Yi. Another month passed in the blink of an eye. On this day, Lu Yi looked at the newly refined extreme-grade spiritual weapon in his hand. His mood was calm. Soon, in 2 months, his refining progress had reached the level where he could refine a supreme-grade spiritual weapon. Although the birth of this supreme-grade spiritual weapon was partly due to luck, since he could refine the first one, he could naturally refine the second one. After extreme-grade spiritual weapons were magic weapons. In comparison, the difficulty of refining them would undoubtedly increase exponentially. The flying sword that met the requirements was most likely magic weapon level. Kong Kong couldn't possibly ask him to refine a spiritual treasure-level sword. That wouldn't be in line with his true lake-stage cultivation. Therefore, as long as he could refine a magic weapon-level flying sword, he should be able to meet Kong Kong's requirements. Then, he would naturally be able to leave the mystic realm. Lu Yi casually threw the extreme-grade spiritual sword in his hand to the side and prepared to continue refining. However, the moment the long sword fell to the ground, a sudden change occurred. Accompanied by a clanging sound, the entire smithing workshop shook. At the same time, Lu Ye's expression changed because he clearly felt that there was some strange movement in the earth lung fire underground. The reason why he could sense this was because the roots of his talent tree had always been embedded in the ground, absorbing the energy of the earth lung fire. The roots of the talent tree were equivalent to an extension of Lu Ye's body. As such, he was naturally sensitive to the abnormalities of the earth lung fire. Before he could figure out what was going on, the earth lung fire suddenly spewed out uncontrollably from the dragon heads of the smithing tables. In an instant, the entire smithing workshop turned into a sea of fire. After a while, Lu Yi rushed out of the smithing workshop with a dirty face. His whole body was red, like a cooked shrimp. In the situation just now, if he hadn't urged the power of his talent tree to protect himself in time, he would have been in a terrible situation. The earth was still shaking, and even the sky began to change inexplicably. Lu Yi turned his head to look around, only to see pitch-black cracks appearing all around him. The cracks were big and small, like cracks, spreading everywhere. What's going on? Lu Yi was bewildered. After a while, all kinds of abnormalities gradually stopped. The fissures in the void also slowly disappeared. Ingwuji ran over from the wooden house. Hupo was lying on top of his head, his two claws clutching his hair tightly. At first glance, it looked like he was wearing a tiger head hat. Ingwuji looked a little panicked. Lu Yi, what happened? Lu Yi slowly shook his head. He also didn't understand the situation. At this moment, Kong Kong's voice suddenly sounded in his ear. Come to the thatched hut. Lu Yi replied and flew towards the thatched hut. When he turned his head, he found that Ingwuji didn't follow. He frowned. Let's go. Ingwuji cried, I can't move. Lu Yi instantly understood that Kong Kong wanted him to go alone. Chapter 928. The foundation of this arcane realm lies in the weapon workshop, and the foundation of the workshop lies in the fire of the earth lung, Kong Kong said. Lu Ye's expression froze. This reminded him of the three great arcane realms of the human clan on the Wushuang continent. The three great arcane realms had always drifted in the void and were not visible. However, after the divine pillar absorbed the power of the ley line of the arcane realms, the three great arcane realms lost their ability to drift in the void because their foundation was destroyed. It was similar to the current situation. I thought this place could last for a few more years. At least, it would not be a problem for you to finish your apprenticeship, but I can only say that it's fate. Kong Kong looked at Lu Yi with relief. Fortunately, you are talented. In the future, even without my guidance, you may surpass me in the art of weapon forging. My obsession should dissipate. Sect Master? Lu Yi did not know what to say for a moment. He could not say that he was the cause of the changes in the arcane realm. He did not expect such a thing to happen. His original intention was to store more fuel for the talent tree in case of emergency. Who knew that this would lead to the destruction of the arcane realm? For almost 2 months, he had been urging the power of the talent tree to devour the fire of the earth lung every day. The talent tree had now stored a large amount of energy. Don't be sad. My original body has long disappeared. Only my obsession remained for thousands of years. Now that I can see the good results, it can be said that God has treated me well. As he spoke, Kong Kong took out an ancient jade slip. Although I really want to see the day you finish your apprenticeship, since it has already happened, there is no reason to avoid it. This is the Sword Instrument Sect's Essence of Weapon Refining and Sword Principle Quintessence. In the future, without my guidance, you can study it by yourself. Lu Yi took the jade slip and carefully put it away. Kong Kong turned his palm, and a 1-foot-long gourd appeared in his palm. The surface of the gourd was covered with many complicated lines. It did not look like it was man-made, but more like it was natural. As for its quality, Lu Yi could not tell at a glance. The sword gourd is the keepsake of the sword instrument sect leader. This item was born from nature and was picked up by the 9th founding master in a desperate situation. Later, it was slightly refined by the 13th founding master. Many of its mysteries have been passed down to this day. Today, I'm giving it to you. I hope that you can bring honor to the sword instrument sect one day. Lu Yi once again reached out to take it. It was heavy. After a moment of silence, he opened his mouth and said, "Sovereign, can you leave with me?" Although Lu Yi already knew that the Kong in front of him was just an obsession, they were still master and disciple after all. In addition, Kong's strength was outstanding. If he could bring him out of the secret realm, he would be a great backer. His sword chi was able to cut back a powerhouse like Thought Moon Immortal. His strength was definitely stronger than many of the current Divine Sea realm in 9 regions. Kong smiled and shook his head. The fact that this old man has been able to survive for thousands of years is already a blessing from the heavens. With the current situation of the 9 regions, this old man's obsession will definitely not appear outside. There was a deeper meaning to his words. Lu Yi fell into deep thought. Kong waved his hand. "You and I have come to an end. Let's go." A soft force brushed against Lu Yi's face. Without any resistance, Lu Yi was pushed out. When he came back to his senses, he had already returned to the entrance of the valley. Ing Wuji had returned to this place at an unknown time, still wearing a tiger head hat on his head. Thought Moon Immortal, who had been climbing the sword mountain, also returned. She looked at Lu Yi and said, "What did that old man say? What happened here?" "The foundation of this secret realm is unstable. It's probably going to collapse." Lu Yi briefly explained the information he knew. Thought Moon Immortal frowned. "Then we have to find a way to leave quickly. Once the secret realm collapsed, it would inevitably cause a huge commotion. If they didn't leave quickly, it was very likely that they would be swept into it. At that time, their life and death would be unpredictable." As they were talking, they suddenly heard a low shout from the thatched hut, "Come!" A clear and melodious sword cry sounded, and the sword mountain buzzed. Flying swords flew out of the sword mountain, turned into streamers of light, and swept in the direction of the thatched hut like swallows returning to their nest. During this time, Thought Moon Immortal had been climbing the sword mountain. Although she had passed many tests of flying swords and obtained many flying swords, there were even more left on the sword mountain. Now, with a command from Kong, tens of thousands of swords flew together. In front of the thatched hut, Kong's figure suddenly expanded rapidly, turning into a phantom that was hundreds of feet tall. The streamers of light gathered from thousands of flying swords were held in his hand, as if he was holding a huge long sword. He glanced at Lu Yi for a moment, then laughed and recited, "All Dharma emptiness is emptiness, emptiness is emptiness, but emptiness is emptiness." The sword slashed down. The sky fell and the earth cracked. A huge crack appeared above Lu Yi and the others. At the same time, the hundreds of feet tall phantom also suddenly shrank. In front of the thatched hut, Kong was still Kong, but his figure had become extremely illusory and transparent. The huge long sword in his hand also collapsed, and many flying swords gathered and rotated like a huge dragon, wrapping Lu Yi and the others in it. Like a spiral, they drilled into the crack and disappeared in the blink of an eye. After Lu Yi and the others left, the space in this secret realm suddenly collapsed. Where the weapon forging workshop was, the fierce fire of the earth fiercely gushed out with the collapse. The tongues of fire engulfed everything in the secret realm, including Kong's illusory figure sitting in front of the thatched hut. The flying swords gathered into a dragon and drilled out of the huge crack in the space, and then all the way up, destroying everything in their path. The location of the entrance to the secret realm was unknown how many feet underground, and above it were solid rocks. But at this moment, under the stirring of the sword dragon, these rocks were not much different from tofu. Until a certain moment, the sword dragon broke through all the restraints, and the three of them saw the light of day again. It was also at this moment that the sword dragon suddenly collapsed, turning into thousands of streamers, and flew away in all directions. Thought Moon Immortal frowned, mainly because this movement was a bit too big, and it was very likely to attract the attention of nearby cultivators. Just as she was about to take Lu Yi and Ing Wu Ji and leave this place, a sudden surge of fire chased after them from below. Astonishingly, it was the fire of the earth from the secret realm. The fire swept out, and the void distorted. Lu Yi and Ing Wu Ji both felt a sense of impending doom. At this time, it was already too late to escape. Thought Moon Immortal flashed in front of the two of them, and she circulated her spiritual power, fiercely slashing down with the willow catkin sword in her hand. Like a waterfall, the sword light directly split the soaring fire in half, and spread to the left and right. Only the three of them were not corroded by the fire. Thought Moon Immortal also circulated her spiritual power with all her might, protecting the two of them. Ing Wu Ji was moved to the extreme. At this time, if Thought Moon Immortal did not care about his life, even if he had 10 lives, it would not be enough. Even if he understood that he was only Lu Ye's collateral, he was still being protected. After more than 10 breaths of time, the flames that were spewing out from below gradually subsided. Lu Yi and Ing Wu Ji breathed a long sigh of relief. Thought Moon Immortal's expression was extremely solemn. She turned to Lu Yi and ordered, "Let's split up. You quietly sneak back to Mount Songyan." Saying so, she grabbed Ing Wu Ji by the collar. Under Ing Wu Ji's bewildered gaze, she directly flew into the air. Her spiritual power and the aura of a divine sea realm cultivator were not concealed in the slightest, as brilliant as the sun. Lu Ye's expression also changed. He hurriedly put the amber into his spirit beast pouch and fled in another direction. The reason Thought Moon Immortal did not take him was because she had already been exposed. That powerful sword strike just now had most likely alarmed the nearby Divine Sea Realm cultivators. She was also quite famous in the Myriad Devil Ridge, and this place was the heart of the Myriad Devil Ridge. In this situation, once the Divine Sea Realm cultivators of the Myriad Devil Ridge learned that she was here, they would definitely pursue her in all kinds of ways. In this kind of situation, if she still took Lu Yi with her, it would be extremely strange. Lu Ye's expression also changed. He hurriedly put the amber into his spirit beast pouch and fled in another direction. The reason Thought Moon Immortal did not take him was because she had already been exposed. That powerful sword strike just now had most likely alarmed the nearby Divine Sea Realm cultivators. She was also quite famous in the Myriad Devil Ridge, and this place was the heart of the Myriad Devil Ridge. In this kind of situation, once the Divine Sea Realm cultivators of the Myriad Devil Ridge learned that she was here, they would definitely pursue her in all kinds of ways. In this kind of situation, if she still took Lu Yi with her, it would be extremely unwise. Once Lu Yi was involved in the fight between the Divine Sea Realm cultivators, he would most likely be in danger. This time was not like the last time when he fought against Wan Zhonggang. Last time, there were only 3 Divine Sea Realm cultivators on the other side. There were not many of them, and Lu Yi could still use his flight of the Rainbow Phoenixes. But this time, there was no telling how many Divine Sea Realm cultivators would be sent from the Myriad Devil Ridge. When Thought Moon Immortal left, she deliberately revealed her aura and power to attract the attention of the powerful cultivators of the Myriad Devil Ridge. This way, it would be easier for Lu Yi to hide and escape. The reason why she took Ing Wu Ji with her was that she was afraid that without her, Ing Wu Ji would expose Lu Ye's identity. In this kind of situation, it was best for Lu Yi to act alone. Thought Moon Immortal did not know how Lu Yi had sneaked into the lonely mountain city. But if he could sneak into the Myriad Devil Ridge safely, it meant that Lu Yi had his own unique skills. Therefore, after realizing the current situation, she made a prompt decision to separate from Lu Yi. She had to worry about Lu Ye's life, but she could ignore Ing Wu Ji's life. If there were Divine Sea Realm cultivators surrounding her, Ing Wu Ji might be of some use in her hands. No matter what, Ing Wu Ji was a core disciple of the Sunluo Hall of this generation. The Myriad Devil Ridge had to take care of the Sunluo Hall's reputation. Thought Moon Immortal had already left. Lu Yi did not dare to fly too far. After flying for 15 kilometers, he immediately landed and found a place to hide. He activated the aura concealment and concealment spiritual tattoos and quietly lay dormant. He felt a headache coming on. Emptiness had caused trouble. The method he used to send the three of them out of the sword instrument sect's secret realm was too grand. Not to mention that the flying swords would attract the attention of tens of thousands of myriad Devil Ridge cultivators. The collapse of the secret realm itself would also attract the attention of nearby cultivators. Coupled with the actions of Thought Moon Immortal, this area had probably attracted the attention of cultivators from all directions. That was indeed the case. Lu Yi soon felt the aura of a divine sea realm cultivator passing by not far away. He acted in a hurry, so he did not know if he was chasing after Thought Moon Immortal. A moment later, another sound of breaking through the air came from nearby. Obviously, the myriad Devil Ridge cultivators who had received the news had come to investigate. In the next half-day, the situation developed as Lu Yi had expected. A large number of myriad Devil Ridge cultivators gathered from all directions to investigate the cause of the strange changes here. Coupled with the disappearance of many ownerless flying swords, the myriad Devil Ridge cultivators' enthusiasm for treasure hunting was aroused. On the Li Plain, it was very lively. There was no news from Thought Moon Immortal. Lu Yi did not know what the situation was, so he did not dare to disturb her. Asking Ing Wuji was an option, but after all, their positions were different. Even if he asked him, Lu Yi did not dare to believe the answer he received. He could only continue to wait. Chapter 929. Lu Yi originally wanted to wait for the commotion here to die down before leaving. However, the situation at Li Plains did not gradually die down. Instead, it became more and more lively. He could not hide anymore. It was not that he had been exposed. It was just that every day Wanmo Ridge cultivators would pass by or over his head. There was no lack of divine sea realm cultivators among them. There were also cultivators who carefully searched every corner of Li Plains in order to find the flying swords that escaped from the mystic realm. There were several times when they almost found his location. In such a situation, it was as difficult as ascending to the heavens for Lu Yi to hide in one place. Once the Wanmo Ridge cultivators found his tracks, the situation would become very complicated. After pondering for a while, Lu Yi made a decision. Since he could not hide anymore, he might as well not hide anymore. In such a situation, it was better to act openly than sneaking around. However, before that he had to disguise himself a little. First of all, his original appearance and identity would definitely not work. Lu Yi's name was like thunder in Wanmo Ridge. Even many divine sea realm cultivators saw him as a thorn in their side. Once exposed, his situation would not be any better than Thought Moon Immortal's. He could not use the identity of Fierce Nyo. He had once entered Lonely Mountain City as Fierce Nyo. At that time, many Wanmo Ridge cultivators had seen him, and Ing Wuji also knew his identity. In this way, he could only change to another identity. After thinking about it, Lu Yi activated his spirit power and changed the color of the Scarlet Dragon battle suit, turning it white. Then he rummaged through his storage space and quickly found a mirror-like spirit weapon. The quality of this spirit weapon was not high. It was about the level of a high-grade spirit weapon. It was a defensive spirit weapon that could block and counter some spell attacks. For Lu Yi, it was not very useful. Other than that, it could indeed be used as a mirror. Facing the mirror, Lu Yejia moved her fingers to the right of the D-Wei leaf. Among the 7 new spiritual tattoos that she had obtained previously, other than the Binglian lotus leaf, which she could not figure out the effects of, she had tried all the other spiritual tattoos. The Thousand-Faced Spirit Tattoo was a spirit tattoo that could change one's appearance. It was undoubtedly very useful, especially for the current Lu Yi. It was simply a divine skill. The appearance changed by the Thousand-Faced Spirit Tattoos was not just an illusion. Instead, it was a disguise by twisting the flesh and blood of the face. In other words, this change was real and not some kind of illusion. Reflected in the mirror, Lu Yi constructed the 1,000 faces on his face and controlled the power of the spirit tattoos to change the distribution of flesh and blood on his face. A moment later, a handsome face appeared in the mirror. He opened up a little distance. The person in the mirror had a jade-like face, eyes like bright stars, and eyebrows like ink painting. His posture was tall and straight, and complemented by his white robes, he really gave off an ethereal feeling. Wasn't he a little too handsome? Lu Yi frowned. Forget it, so be it. Anyway, it was just a new identity, and he couldn't be bothered with it. After putting away the mountain plate saber, he took out a long sword from his storage space and attached it to his waist. A young and handsome sword cultivator was born. In the sword instrument sect's secret realm, he had once told Kong Kong that he was a sword cultivator. In Wuji almost laughed out loud. However, strictly speaking, he wasn't lying. In the imprint of the dragon soaring realm's origin, he had met many sword cultivators. Lu Ye's mind was attached to them, and he cultivated and grew with them. Now, his attainments in the sword Dao were even better than his saber skills. It was only because his saber skills were the most suitable for him that Lu Yi did not abandon his saber for a sword. Only the most suitable for himself could reach a higher position. Otherwise, he would only be learning from others and would never be able to surpass his predecessors. After thinking for a while, Lu Yi took out the sword gourd that Kong Kong had given him and hung it on his waist. Fourth senior brother had the same appearance, but in comparison, the sword gourd was smaller, and fourth senior brother's was much bigger. With a new disguise, Lu Yi walked out of his hiding place and flew into the sky. Along the way, he encountered many groups of myriad demons ridge cultivators, but they did not have any interactions with each other. These myriad demons ridge cultivators probably did not expect that there would be a Grand Heaven Alliance cultivator in this world who would be so bold as to act so openly in the hinterland of the enemy camp. This was the so-called darkness under the lamp. Of course, the main reason was that Lu Yi had nothing to fear. Even if he really encountered any interrogation or questioning, he would have a way to deal with it. As long as he could get out of the Li Plains and leave this crowded place, he could sneak back to the Vicissitude Flame Mountain Pass. Along the way, there were no surprises. Just as Lu Yi felt that this was going smoothly, a group of people suddenly came from the front. Before they got close, Lu Ye's heart skipped a beat. This was because he felt a divine thought sweep past him. He looked up and saw that the leader was a woman in her early 30s. She was dressed in a palace robe and had an exquisite figure. She was very beautiful. What caught Lu Ye's attention was not her beauty and figure, but her cultivation level. This woman was a divine sea realm cultivator. Even though he met some people previously, they were not in the divine sea realm, so Lu Yi did not feel any pressure. Now that he met a divine sea realm cultivator, Lu Yi was not sure if she could see through his disguise. However, using the Thousand Faces rune to change his appearance was a deliberate decision. Doing so was at least more reliable than wearing a mask. Under the current situation, if he still wore a mask, he would appear sneaky and attract attention. There was even a group of true Lake Realm cultivators following behind this woman. They were searching everywhere. It seemed like they were either looking for traces of the Thought Moon Immortal or those flying swords. As they faced each other, Lu Yi hurriedly moved to the side and lowered his head. He was prepared to leave after this group of people left. He could clearly feel that the woman's gaze stopped on his face for a moment, but she quickly moved away. They walked past each other. Just as Lu Yi let out a long sigh of relief, he heard a delicate voice from the group of cultivators. "Marshal Uncle, this person is alone. If he accidentally bumps into that poisonous woman, won't he be dead for sure? I heard that vicious woman killed many people this time. Why don't we bring him along? Why do you care about him? In this situation, he still dares to be alone. It's either greed or arrogance. Even if he dies, he deserves it." Another voice sounded. "But he's still from the Myriad Devil Ridge. I think you can't bear to see him die because he's so handsome, right?" That person snorted. "I didn't say that. Don't talk nonsense." The woman who spoke earlier blushed. As the two spoke, the woman stopped and said, "Indeed, he's still from the Myriad Devil Ridge. Since we've met, let's bring him along. I'll talk to him." The woman's voice sounded again. Not far away, Lu Yi was having a headache. He never thought that he would be in trouble even if he made himself handsome. If he had known, he would have made himself look more ordinary. When he looked up, he saw a female cultivator flying towards him. Her figure wasn't plump, but her chest was heavy. It could be said that she was like a fruit hanging from a thin branch. She immediately attracted Lu Ye's attention. As if she sensed Lu Ye's gaze, the woman's face blushed slightly. She stopped 3 feet away from Lu Yi and curtsied, "Greetings, junior brother." Her cultivation was at the 7th order True Lake realm, much higher than Lu Yi. She was also older, so it wasn't a problem for her to call Lu Yi junior brother. "Senior sister, what's the matter?" Lu Yi returned the greeting. "My martial uncle wants to talk to you." When the woman spoke, she gestured to a place not far away. Lu Yi knew what she wanted to do and wanted to refuse. But when he looked up and saw the gaze of the Spirit Sea Realm cultivator, he could only agree helplessly, "Okay."